They said I was a liar, labeling me ungrateful and dramatic for attention. That ended the afternoon. My stepmother slapped my face and dragged me by my hair in front of a complete stranger. He raised his phone, looked right at the scene, and said the words that flipped my universe. "She isn't lying. I recorded it. For the first time in 26 years, the narrative didn't belong to my family anymore. It belonged to me. Faith Schaffer. That is the name on the driver's license the paramedic had to fish out of my back pocket because my hands were shaking too violently to retrieve it myself. I am 26 years old. I am lying on a gurney that smells of industrial disinfectant and old fear, staring up at a metal ceiling where red and blue lights are conducting a chaotic war. The siren is not just a sound, it is a physical object, a drill boring straight through the center of my skull, vibrating against the soft tissue of my brain. Every time the ambulance hits a pothole or swerves to bypass the suburban traffic of my childhood neighborhood, the movement tears a fresh gasp out of my throat. But the pain in my body is secondary. It is background noise. The primary sensation is the taste in my mouth. It is metallic, like sucking on a penny, mixed with the unmistakable saltiness of my own blood. I run my tongue over the corner of my lip. It feels swollen, foreign, like a piece of meat that does not belong to my face. My right cheek is radiating heat, a throbbing, stinging fire that maps out exactly where Vanessa's hand connected with my skin. It feels less like a slap and more like a burn, as if she had branded me. Lower down. My shoulder screams in protest with every shallow breath I take. That is from the yank. The violent jerk when she grabbed my hair and pulled me backward, throwing off my center of gravity until I hit the patio pavers. But even with the siren wailing and the blood in my mouth, the loudest thing in this confined space is a voice from 10 minutes ago. It is echoing inside the hollows of my ears, drowning out the medical equipment. "Don't humiliate this family before strangers." That was what she had hissed. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I didn't mean to." Her only concern, even as her fingernails were digging into my scalp, was the preservation of the image, the Lane family, the perfect facade. "Stay with me, Faith." The voice cuts through the memory. It belongs to the paramedic hovering over me. He is a man in his 40s with tired eyes and hands that are surprisingly gentle as they check my pupil dilation with a penlight. The light stings, and I flinch. "Faith?" he asks again. His tone is even, professional, but underscored with a steeliness that demands an answer. "I need you to tell me who did this, and do not tell me you fell. I have been doing this job for 15 years. People do not fall and end up with hand-shaped contusions on their face and avulsion patches on their scalp. Who did this to you?" The instinct to lie is so strong it is almost biological. It is a reflex honed over 2 decades of practice. "Oh, I just tripped. I am so clumsy. It was my fault. I provoked her." It is just a misunderstanding. The excuses rise in my throat, ready to spill out like bile. I want to say it was an accident. I want to say it was nothing. I want to protect them because that is what I have been trained to do since I was 11 years old. I am the convenient child. I am the shock absorber. I am the one who smooths over the rough edges so the neighbors do not see the cracks. I open my mouth to say, "It is okay," but my throat closes up. I physically cannot do it. The lie gets stuck, wedged tight against the truth that is fighting its way out. In the silence, the images from the afternoon assault me. I see the backyard. It was perfect. It was sickeningly perfect. The golden hour sun filtering through the leaves, the fairy lights twinkling even though it was not quite dark yet, the smell of expensive charcoal and marinated steaks, the laughter of the neighbors, people who have watched me grow up, people who think they know us. I see the garage door opening. I see the shape under the silver tarp, the BMW, the 3 Series that Mason had been drooling over for 6 months, the car that cost more than my entire college tuition, the car that was purchased, I knew with a sick certainty, using the liquidity from the trust fund my grandmother had meant for my freedom. I see Vanessa's face, not the mask she wears for the PTA meetings, Not the soft smile she uses when Richard's boss comes for dinner. I see the real face, the twisted, ugly snarl of a woman whose authority has been challenged. I see the vein pulsing in her neck right before her hand flew out. I see the neighbors, the frozen smiles, the wine glasses halted halfway to mouths, and I see the stranger, the man I did not know, standing near the azalea bushes, holding his phone up, the witness. She isn't lying. I recorded it. That sentence broke the spell. It shattered the glass dome we had been living under. The paramedic is still waiting. He is checking my blood pressure now, the cuff squeezing my arm tight, but his eyes never leave my face. Faith, who? I swallow the blood in my mouth. I look at the sterile white cabinets of the ambulance. My family, I whisper. The words feel jagged coming out, like spitting up glass shards. The paramedic pauses. He exchanges a quick, loaded glance with his partner, a younger woman who is driving. They communicate in a silent language of raised eyebrows and tightened jaws. They know. They see the nice clothes. They see the expensive suburban address on the dispatch log. And now they see the battered young woman claiming her own people did this. I feel a hysterical bubble of laughter rising in my chest. It is not funny. It is the furthest thing from funny, but the absurdity of it is suffocating. They just wanted a BMW, I say. My voice sounds wet and broken. They just wanted a BMW for their son. It sounds insane. Saying it out loud, in the cold, clinical air of the ambulance. It sounds like the ravings of a fever dream, a family destroying itself over a luxury sedan, a stepmother beating her adult stepdaughter in front of a birthday party crowd because of a car. The paramedic stops writing on his clipboard. He looks at me, really looks at me, with a mixture of pity and horror. He realizes now, this is not a fainting spell from excitement. This is not a clumsy fall. This is a domestic assault in the middle of the American dream. They did this for a car? He asks softly, as if trying to piece together a puzzle that has no right to exist. For Mason, I correct him, tears finally leaking out of the corners of my eyes, hot and stinging against the raw skin of my cheek. Everything is for Mason. The ambulance hits a smooth patch of highway, the tires humming a low, steady note. The window between the cab and the back is closed, isolating us from the world. The noise of the party is gone. The screaming is gone. The gasps of the neighbors are gone. There is just the beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor, syncing up with the frantic rhythm of my chest. I realize something then, a realization so sharp it hurts more than the slap. I have spent 26 years telling the truth. I told them when I was 12 that I was lonely. I told them when I was 16 that I was overwhelmed. I told them when I was 20 that I needed help, and every single time, I was told I was making it up. I was told I was dramatic. I was told I was a liar. But today, I was beaten. Today, I bled. Today, I was dragged by my hair like an animal, and only now, because a stranger filmed it, and because a paramedic is staring at the bruising blooming on my face, only now is the truth valid. It took physical violence to make my reality real to the world. I look up at the strip of white LED lights running down the center of the ambulance ceiling. They are too bright. They leave tracers in my vision. I feel untethered. It is a strange sensation, like being an astronaut whose cable has just snapped. I am drifting away from the planet I have lived on my entire life. That house, that beautiful two-story colonial with the manicured lawn and the double garage, that was my world. It was a world of rules and scripts. Smile, faith, be grateful. Faith, don't be selfish. Faith, Mason needs this. Faith. I am still physically in the ambulance, speeding away from that house at 70 miles per hour. But in my mind, I am watching the tether snap. I think about the trust fund, the letter from my grandmother. Build your own life. She had known. Somehow, she had known that if she did not leave me a ladder, they would keep me in the hole forever. And they had tried to steal the ladder. They had tried to turn the ladder into firewood to keep Mason warm. A cold clarity washes over me, settling in my stomach, heavier than the nausea. If I go back, I die. Not physically. Perhaps they might not kill me. Vanessa is too calculated for murder. It leaves too much of a mess. But if I go back, if I accept the apology that Richard is surely crafting in his head right now, if I accept the "it was just stress" narrative, then Faith Schaffer ceases to exist. I will become a ghost. I will become nothing more than a bank account with a pulse, a servant who exists to applaud Mason's milestones while my own life withers on the vine. I close my eyes. The darkness behind my lids is red-tinged. If I live through this, I think, the thought forming like a vow, hard and unbreakable as a diamond, I am not going back. I will never be the obedient shadow again. The heart monitor picks up speed. Beep, 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 beep. It is betraying my internal state. My adrenaline is spiking again, not from fear of the injury, but from the terrifying magnitude of the decision I just made. Walking away means burning it down. It means being the villain they always accused me of being. The paramedic notices the spike on the monitor. He reaches out and places a hand on my uninjured shoulder. His grip is firm, grounding. Deep breaths. Faith, he says. Try to slow it down. You are safe now. I look at him. I search his face for the lie. I am waiting for him to add, but you should call your parents. Or family is everything. I am waiting for the caveat. We are heading to St. Jude's, he continues, his voice low and reassuring. The doctors there are good. The police are going to meet us there to take your statement properly. You are not alone in this. You are not alone in this. Stay awake, he instructs. Focus on my voice. We are here with you. For the first time in as long as I can remember, the phrase "we are here with you" does not feel like a manipulation. It does not feel like a prelude to a demand. It is simply a statement of fact. The ambulance turns a sharp corner, leaning heavily to the left. I slide slightly on the stretcher, the movement jarring my neck. I wince, breathing through teeth that feel loose in my gums. I think of the stranger again, the man with the phone. I do not know his name. I might never see him again. But he handed me a weapon. He handed me the truth. I am Faith Schaffer. I am 26 years old. My stepmother just assaulted me because I refused to buy her son a luxury car. I repeat the facts in my head. I solidify them. I refuse to let the gaslighting seep back in. The blood in my mouth is real. The pain is real. The siren is real. I let my head fall back against the thin pillow. I watch the red and blue lights dance, painting the interior of the ambulance in the colors of emergency, the colors of disaster. But for me, for the first time, they look like the colors of rescue. I am awake, I whisper to the paramedic, and I mean it in more ways than one. I am awake. Analyze the request. Task: write part 2 of the story based on the provided outline. Role: American writer with 100 years of experience. Realistic, modern, emotional style. First-person perspective. Faith Schaffer. Language: English. Length: 1,400–1,800 words. Content: childhood in the suburbs near Portland, Oregon. Loss of biological mother at 11. Father, Richard, remarries Vanessa. Faith becomes the convenient child. Cooking, cleaning, tutoring, Mason. Academic success ignored. Good, less to worry about. Contrast in treatment between Faith, practical gifts, and Mason, lavish investment. Faith forced into domestic labor from 8th grade. Dreams, art/writing, crushed by Richard. Selfish. Family first. Internalized message. You only matter when you are useful. Writing secret stories at night as an escape map. Formatting rules. Write numbers, money, time, dates, percentages, in spoken form, e.g., $20, not $20. No. Ellipses. Fix grammar. No canvas. Just chat output. Deconstruct the narrative arc for part 2. Setting the scene. The deceptive perfection of the Portland suburbs. The before times, mother's death, verse. The after times, Vanessa's arrival. The transition. How the household dynamic shifted subtly. Not Cinderella-style slavery in rags, but modern, insidious parentification. The convenient child dynamic. Specific examples of duties, recognition, the report card incident. The disparity. Faith versus Mason. Birthdays and resources. The justification of investing in the boy. The teenage years. 8th grade duties. The good stepmother public image versus private reality. Crushed dreams. The request for art writing classes. The rejection framed as compliment. You're too smart for that. The internal escape. Writing at night. The subconscious planning for freedom. Drafting. Section by section. Mental outline and key phrases. Intro. Portland suburbs. Green grass. White fences. The Lane house. The loss. Mom died when I was 11. The silence. Then Vanessa came. She was beautiful, polished. The role. I wasn't the daughter. I was the staff. The convenient child. The report card. Straight A's. Vanessa's reaction. Good. One less thing. Pivot to Mason's needs immediately. The brother. Mason. Half-brother. The golden child. The contrast in birthdays. Socks for me. Xbox for him. He's a boy. He needs the leg up. The labor. 8th grade. Making lunches. Laundry. Vanessa's committees. The neighbors praising Vanessa for my behavior. She raised her so well. The denial of self. Wanting to paint or write. Richard shutting it down. Family relies on you. The night. Writing stories. The invisible girl. Writing. Focusing on tone. Tone should be bitter but restrained. Not whining, but observing the injustice with sharp clarity. Show. Don't just tell. Instead of saying they ignored me, describe the silence after a straight A report card. Constraint check. Numbers as words, no ellipses. Drafting the content, iterative refinement. Opening. Describe the house in Oregon, the rain, the moss, the perfect lawn. Mother's death. It wasn't violent. It was a fading away. Richard didn't know how to be a single dad. He hired a replacement. Vanessa. Vanessa's entry. She didn't beat me. She just managed me, like an employee. The convenient label. I became the third parent. Cooking, cleaning. The academic contrast. I brought home a 4.0, 4.0. Vanessa's reaction. Efficient dismissal. Mason's mediocrity celebrated or excused. The birthday contrast. My 16th birthday. I got a luggage set. Practical, telling me to leave eventually. Mason's 10th. A bouncy castle. A drone. The justification. It's an investment. The no. I wanted to join the art club. It cost money and time. Richard said no. Why waste time painting when the dishwasher needs loading? Paraphrased. The writing. My secret rebellion. Refining and polishing. Self-correction during drafting. Check. Did I use digits? Correction. Change 11 to 11. 8th grade to 8th grade. Check. Is the tone too angry? Adjustment. Make it more analytical. Faith is smart. She sees the pattern now. Check. The BMW foreshadowing. Connect the childhood neglect to the adult demand for the car. Check. No ellipses. Replace with dashes or full stops. Final polish, simulated. Writing the text. Focusing on the sensory details. The smell of rain. The sound of the garage door. The coldness of the kitchen tiles. Key scene. The report card. The feeling of being low maintenance as a curse. Key scene. The good stepmom mask. Neighbors praising Vanessa for Faith's labor. Final review against constraints. 1,400, 1,800 words? Yes. Looks substantial. Numbers in words? Checked. No? Checked. No canvas? Checked. English language? Yes. Output generation. Proceeding to generate the response based on these steps. Self-correction during the process. I need to make sure I don't make Richard a cartoon villain. He's an enabler. He's passive. He's busy. That hurts more than active malice sometimes. The convenient child trope is key here. Let's write. Scene: the Oregon rain, the house. Scene: the chore chart that wasn't a chart, just expectations. Scene: the art class denial. Okay, ready? Drafting text. My childhood did not look like a horror movie. It looked like a brochure for the American dream. I was 11 when my mother died. Vanessa Lane. She was beautiful in a sharp, manicured way. The contrast between Mason and me was not subtle. It was geometric. Reviewing specific constraint. Writing numbers as words. Grade 8. 8th grade. $100. $100. Reviewing specific constraint. No ellipses. Ensure all thoughts are finished or cut with a dash. Final check of the prompt requirements. First person, Faith. 1400, 1800 words. Content matches the specific bullet points of Part 2. Proceeding to output. Note: the user asked to remove and fix non-English errors. I will ensure the text is clean. Word count management. I need to expand on the feelings and the specific incidents to hit the 1400 range. I will detail the sensory experience of the practical gifts and the specific conversations about the art club. Let's go. Title: Part 2, Implicit. Text: my childhood took place in a postcard. We lived in a sprawling subdivision just outside of Portland, Oregon, where the rain was a constant, misty gray backdrop that made the lawns glow a radioactive green. Our house was a 2-story beige colonial with black shutters and a white fence that was power washed twice a year. If you drove past the Lane residence at 5 in the afternoon, you would see a scene curated for public consumption. You would see Richard Lane washing his sedan in the driveway. You would see Vanessa Lane pruning her prize-winning hydrangeas. And you would see me, Faith, sitting on the porch swing with a book, quiet and clean. To the neighbors, we were the gold standard. We were the family they used to guilt-trip their own children. Why can't you be well-behaved like Faith? Why can't you keep a garden like Vanessa? But the rot in a house like ours is never on the siding. It is always in the foundation. My biological mother died when I was 11 years old. It was ovarian cancer. A slow, quiet thief that stole her by degrees until there was nothing left but silence in the hallways. Her death did not bring violence into my life. My father, Richard, was not a drinker. He did not hit me. He simply did not know what to do with the grief, or with the daughter who looked so much like the woman he had just buried. So he did what many men of his generation and temperament do. He outsourced the problem. He married Vanessa 2 years later. Vanessa was not the wicked stepmother of fairy tales. She did not lock me in the attic or feed me poisoned apples. She was far more modern and far more efficient. She was a project manager, and I was a legacy asset that came with the merger. She was beautiful in a sharp, angular way, the kind of woman who wore white linen and never spilled coffee on it. She smiled with her teeth but rarely with her eyes. From the very first week she moved in, the unwritten rules of the house shifted. It was subtle at first, a suggestion here, a nudge there, but by the time I was 14, the hierarchy was set in stone. I was not the princess of the house. I was not the cherished daughter who needed protection. I was the convenient child. I learned very quickly that my value to the Lane family was directly calculated by how little space I took up and how much labor I could provide. I was the grease in the gears. If I was quiet, if I got good grades, if I kept my room spotless, if I anticipated their needs before they asked, then I was allowed to exist in peace. I remember coming home from school one afternoon in the 9th grade. I was 15. I had just received my report card. It was a perfect 4.0. Every subject was an A. I had worked myself into the ground for those grades, staying up until 2 in the morning studying biology and history, driven by a desperate, childish hope that if I was perfect enough, they would finally look at me with the same adoration they saved for the baby. I walked into the kitchen. Vanessa was at the granite island, scrolling through her iPad, frowning at a catering menu for a neighborhood block party she was organizing. "I got my report card," I said. placing the heavy paper on the counter. Vanessa did not look up immediately. She tapped the screen a few times, then glanced at the paper. Her eyes scanned the column of A's. There was no widening of the eyes, no smile. No, I am so proud of you, Faith. Good, she said. Her voice clipped. That is one less thing for me to worry about. At least I do not have to hire a tutor for you. She pushed the paper back toward me as if it were a paid bill. Then, in the same breath, she turned the screen toward me. Faith, look at these cleats. Do you think Mason would like the neon yellow or the black ones? The coach says he has potential for the varsity team eventually, so we need to get him the professional grade gear now. It is about the mindset. Mason was 8 years old. He was playing pee-wee soccer. He spent most of the time on the field picking dandelions. I stood there, my hand resting on my perfect report card, looking at the $200 cleats for an 8-year-old who barely knew the rules of the game. The yellow ones, I said quietly. He likes bright colors. Right, Vanessa said, already adding them to her cart. Go start the rice, will you? Your father will be home in 40 minutes. That was the pattern. My excellence was expected. It was the baseline fee for my room and board. Mason's mediocrity was celebrated as potential that just needed more investment. The birthdays were the starkest reminder of where we stood. My birthdays were exercises in pragmatism. For my 16th birthday, a milestone that most American girls dream about, I received a set of high-quality luggage, a new graphing calculator for my math class, and a winter coat. They are practical, Richard said, patting my shoulder as I unwrapped the gray suitcase. You will get a lot of use out of that. I remember staring at the suitcase. Even then, the subconscious message was loud and clear. This is for when you leave. We are preparing you to go away. 6 months later, for Mason's 11th birthday, the backyard was transformed. They rented a massive inflatable obstacle course. They hired a professional DJ. And the gift? It was the latest gaming console, a virtual reality headset, and a dirt bike. When I asked Richard, tentatively, why Mason needed a dirt bike when he barely rode his bicycle, my father looked at me with a frown, as if I were being deliberately dense. He is a boy. Faith, Richard said, swirling his scotch. He needs to be active. He needs to take risks. We are investing in his confidence. You cannot put a price tag on a young man's confidence. And what about a young woman's confidence, I wanted to ask. Is my confidence free? But I did not ask. I went into the kitchen and cut the cake. I served the slices to Mason's screaming friends. I cleaned up the wrapping paper. I was the stagehand in the production of Mason's golden childhood. By the time I was in the 8th grade, I was effectively running the household. Vanessa was always busy. She was the president of the Homeowners Association. She was on the school board. She was organizing charity galas for causes she did not actually care about, but that looked good on a resume. Richard was always at the office, a vague term that covered everything from actual work to golf games with clients. So, I woke up at 6 in the morning. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs for Mason, coffee for Richard, a protein smoothie for Vanessa. I packed Mason's lunch, cutting the crusts off his sandwiches because he refused to eat them otherwise. I did the laundry. I folded Richard's dress shirts. I matched Mason's endless supply of athletic socks. The neighbors saw this, of course, but they did not see a Cinderella story. They saw a triumph of parenting. I remember Mrs. Gable from next door stopping Vanessa by the mailbox one day when I was sweeping the front porch. "You have done such a miracle with Faith," Mrs. Gable gushed. "It is so rare to see a teenager so responsible, so grounded. You really taught her the value of family." Vanessa smiled that terrifying, perfect smile. She reached out and smoothed a lock of hair behind her ear. "Oh, we just believe in everyone pulling their weight. Faith loves to help. She is such an old soul." I tightened my grip on the broom handle until my knuckles turned white. Loves to help. I did not love to help. I helped because the alternative was a cold, silent disapproval that made the air in the house unbreathable. I helped because if I didn't, the chaos would fall on me. If Mason lost his homework, It was my fault for not organizing his backpack. If dinner was late, it was my fault for not reminding Vanessa to defrost the chicken. I was the safety net. I caught everything before it hit the ground. There was one time I tried to ask for something for myself, just once. I was 17. I had discovered, in the stolen hours between midnight and 2 in the morning, that I loved to draw. I sketched the trees outside my window. I sketched the curve of the staircase. I sketched imaginary worlds where houses did not have white fences and silence. My art teacher at school had seen my sketchbook and encouraged me to apply for a summer-intensive program at the local art college. It was a prestigious program. It cost money. But we had money. We had dirt bike money. We had BMW money, though I did not know that yet. I brought the brochure to dinner. I waited until Richard had finished his steak and was in a good mood. "Dad," I started, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Mrs. Higgins thinks I have talent. She wants me to do this summer program. It is 3 weeks. I would learn oil painting and figure drawing." I slid the glossy brochure across the table. It landed next to Mason's elbow. He was busy playing a game on his phone at the table, a rule exemption only he enjoyed. Richard picked up the brochure. He put on his reading glasses. He looked at it for exactly 10 seconds. Then he took his glasses off and placed the brochure back on the table. "Faith, honey," he began, using the tone he reserved for explaining why we could not adopt a stray dog. "This is charming, really, but let us be realistic." "I am good at it," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I am sure you are," Vanessa chimed in, wiping her mouth with a napkin. "But think about the logistics. 3 weeks? That is right when Mason has his basketball camp. I need you here to drive him in the morning so I can make my Pilates class. And who is going to handle the meal prep if you are gone all day playing with paint?" "It is not playing," I said, a spark of anger flaring in my chest. "It is art." Richard sighed. He looked disappointed, not at the situation, but at me. "Faith, you are a smart girl. You have a good head on your shoulders. Why fill it with these fantasies? Art is a hobby for rich wives who have nothing to do. You are going to college for business or administration, something useful, something that contributes." "But—" "Enough," Richard said. His voice dropped an octave. The pleasant facade vanished. "Do not be selfish. Faith, this family relies on you. We are a team. Vanessa does so much for you. I do so much for you. Asking for thousands of dollars to go paint pictures while your brother needs support? It is unbecoming." Unbecoming. That was the word that killed the artist in me, or at least, it drove her underground. I realized then that my dreams were considered a luxury that the Lane family could not afford, not financially, but logistically. My purpose was to be the support staff for the main characters. I was an NPC, a non-player character, in the video game of Mason's life. That night, I threw the brochure in the trash, but I did not stop creating. I just changed the medium. I started writing. I wrote late at night, under the covers with the flashlight on my phone, tapping away on a cracked screen until my thumbs ached. I wrote stories about a girl who was invisible. In my stories, the girl could walk through walls. She could disappear at will. She could board trains that went to cities where nobody knew her name. I wrote about families that looked perfect on the outside, but were filled with clockwork gears on the inside, grinding up the children to keep the machine running. I did not know it then, lying in the dark while the house slept around me. But I was not just writing fantasy. I was drafting a blueprint. I was writing the map I would eventually use to escape. You only matter when you are useful. That was the mantra etched into the drywall of my bedroom. That was the message in every practical Christmas gift, in every dismissed report card, in every pile of laundry that was left on my bed for me to fold. They never beat me with a belt. They never locked me in a closet without food. If I told anyone, they would have laughed. Look at your nice clothes. Faith, look at your nice house. You are so lucky. But cruelty does not always leave a bruise. Sometimes cruelty is the slow, methodical erasure of a person's soul. It is the daily confirmation that your feelings are an inconvenience and your dreams are a burden. I learned to be quiet. I learned to smile while I washed the dishes. I learned to say thank you for the socks while my brother opened a new iPad. I became the ghost they wanted me to be. But what they forgot about ghosts is that ghosts see everything, ghosts remember everything, and eventually, ghosts get tired of haunting the same old house. By the time I graduated high school, I had stopped asking for things. I had stopped showing them my grades. I simply existed, waiting, saving every dollar I found on the sidewalk, every birthday check from a distant aunt, hiding it away like a squirrel preparing for a winter that I knew was coming. I looked at the white fence and the green grass, and I promised myself one thing. Someday, I am going to walk past that fence and I am never, ever looking back. But I had no idea that it would take a BMW and a slap in the face to finally open the gate. Analyze the request. Task: write part 3 of the story based on the provided outline. Role: American writer, 100 years XP. Realistic, modern, emotional style. First person: Faith Schaffer. Language: English. Length: 1,400-1,800 words. Content: age 20-23. Faith working, studying, Northbridge Metrics, data analyst assistant. Financial abuse, exploitation. Faith pays tuition plus rent for fairness. Mason gets everything free. Private school, basketball camp, pickup truck. Vanessa borrowing money, never returned. Family emergencies, plumbing, credit limits. Ill faith pays, family helps family. Workplace parallel, calm in crisis, equals trauma response. Realization of being an ATM or infrastructure, Wi-Fi, electricity. The question: would they miss me or my money? Formatting rules: numbers as words, no ellipses, no canvas. Self-correction. From previous turn, ensure the tone shifts to social realism, colder, more analytical, focused on the economics of the relationship. Deconstruct the narrative arc for part 3. The grind, 20-23. University life versus Mason's life, the job at the coffee shop, then Northbridge Metrics. The fairness trap, paying rent to live in her own childhood home while Mason gets a free ride. The borrowing scheme, Vanessa's sweet manipulation, the gradual erosion of Faith's savings. The crisis management, house repairs, Mason's needs, the guilt trip, family helps family. Workplace mirror, the boss praising her calmness, the realization that her strength is just conditioned suppression. The ledger, Faith looks at the bank statements. She realizes she has paid more than she ever cost them. The epiphany, being infrastructure rather than a person. Drafting, section by section, mental outline and key phrases. Intro, the transition to adulthood, not freedom, but a heavier chain. The job, barista stains, then data entry, Northbridge Metrics, the contrast between my fatigue and Mason's leisure. The rent, Richard sitting me down. You're an adult now. Pay $500. Meanwhile, Mason gets a truck. The borrowing, Vanessa's soft voice. Just until payday. The breakdown of the fridge. Can you cover it? The work persona, my boss, maybe named Mr. Henderson. You're so steady, Faith. Why? Because panic wasn't an option at home. The Mason contrast. He crashes the truck. Daddy fixes it. I need tires. I work double shifts. The financial realization. Pulling the bank records. The math doesn't lie. I am a net positive asset. They are liabilities. The question. If I vanished, what would they mourn? The lost income. Writing. Focusing on tone. Tone. Cynical, exhausted, sharp. Use economic metaphors. ROI, assets, liabilities, infrastructure. Constraint check, 20-23. 20-23, $500. Drafting the content. Iterative refinement. Scene 1. The coffee shop days, then the office. Scene 2. The rent talk. Richard's logic. It teaches responsibility. but only for me. Scene 3. Mason's truck, a Ford, a Toyota, something big. To fit in. Scene 4. The emergency, a water heater breaks, Vanessa's panic, Faith's credit card. Scene 5. The office, the compliment that feels like an insult. Oldest sister energy. Scene 6. The accounting, sitting with a spreadsheet, the realization of the walking wallet status. Scene 7. The infrastructure metaphor. I am the electricity. You only notice me when the lights go out. Refining and polishing. Self-correction during drafting. Check. Did I include Northbridge metrics? Yes. Check. Did I mention the family helps family line? Yes. Crucial gaslighting phrase. Check. No ellipses. Replace with dashes. Check. Number formatting. 5 years, 5 years, $20, $20. Final Polish, simulated. Text generation. I was 22 when I landed the job at Northbridge Metrics. Text generation. Mason was 16. He didn't have a job. He had a brand new pickup truck. Text generation. Faith, honey, are you liquid right now? Vanessa's voice. Final review against constraints. 1,400, 1,800 words? Looks good. Numbers in words? Checked. No? Checked. English? Yes. Output generation. Self-correction during drafting the text. I need to emphasize the subtlety of the financial abuse. It's not robbery at gunpoint. It's death by 1,000. Can you just cover this? Requests. The juxtaposition of Faith paying rent while Mason gets a private school tuition is the emotional core here. Let's write. Title, Part 3, Implicit. Text. The years between 20 and 23 are supposed to be the era of reckless self-discovery. They are supposed to be a time of bad decisions, cheap travel, and the messy, glorious process of figuring out who you are outside of your parents' shadow. For me, those years were simply an extension of the servitude I had been born into. Only now the currency had changed from household chores to actual dollars. I was living a double life. By day, I was a student, and later a junior data analyst assistant at a tech firm called Northbridge Metrics. By night, and on weekends, I was the silent financier of the Lane family lifestyle. I remember the day Richard sat me down at the kitchen table. I was 20 years old. I was working 30 hours a week as a barista while taking a full course load at the state university. I was exhausted. My hands were perpetually dry from sanitizing solution, and I smelled like stale espresso beans. Faith, my father said, clasping his hands on the mahogany table. You are an adult now, and in the real world, adults pay their way. It is only fair that you start contributing rent if you want to keep your room here. We want to teach you responsibility. Responsibility. That was their favorite word when it came to me. $500 a month, he stated, plus a share of the utilities. I looked at him. I knew exactly how much he made. I knew because I filed his receipts. I knew he had just dropped $3,000 on a new set of golf clubs, but I nodded. I said yes, because I had been trained to say yes. So, I paid. I paid $500 a month to sleep in a room I had cleaned myself since I was 8. Meanwhile, Mason, who was 16 at the time, was struggling in public school. The solution, according to Vanessa, was not to hire a tutor or take away his video games. It was to transfer him to a private academy across town. The tuition was $25,000 a year. It is an investment, Vanessa told me over dinner, while I ate a sandwich I had bought with my own money. He needs the smaller class sizes. He is sensitive. He needs an environment that nurtures his leadership potential. A week later, a brand new pickup truck appeared in the driveway. It was for Mason. He needs to fit in, Richard explained, catching me staring at the gleaming chrome bumper. You know how private school kids are. If he shows up in an old beater, he will be ostracized. We are just giving him a level playing field. I drove a 10-year-old sedan that rattled when I went over 40 miles per hour. I paid for my own gas. I paid for my own insurance. I paid for my own oil changes. Mason got a gas card linked to Richard's bank account. The disparity was so glaring it was almost comical, but nobody laughed. Then came the job at Northbridge Metrics. It was my first real job. I was good at it. I was good at staring at spreadsheets, finding patterns in the chaos, and organizing data until it made sense. My boss, a woman named Sarah, loved me. "You are incredible in a crisis, Faith," Sarah told me once after a server crash threatened to wipe out a week of client data. Everyone else was running around hyperventilating. I was calmly migrating backup files. "You have such a steady hand. You must be the oldest sister in your family. That creates a certain kind of resilience." I smiled and thanked her. I did not tell her that my resilience was not a skill I had learned in a workshop. It was a trauma response. I was calm because I had spent my entire life walking on eggshells. I was calm because in the Lane house, panic was a luxury reserved for Vanessa. If I panicked, the whole ecosystem collapsed. My calmness was just a lifetime of swallowed screaming. But the steady paycheck from Northbridge Metrics became a curse. Vanessa developed a radar for my paydays. It was uncanny. Every second Friday, like clockwork, a crisis would emerge. "Faith, honey," she would say, her voice dropping into that sweet, conspiratorial register she used when she wanted something. "Are you liquid right now?" The first time, it was the dishwasher. It broke 3 days before Thanksgiving. "Your father is so stressed with the quarter end at work," she whispered, leaning against my bedroom doorframe. "His credit card is near the limit because of Mason's tuition payment. If I ask him for $1,000 for a dishwasher right now, he might have a heart attack. Can you just cover it? I will pay you back as soon as his bonus comes in. Family helps family, right?" Family helps family. That phrase was the shackle they used to bind me. I bought the dishwasher. I never saw that $1,000 again. When Richard's bonus came in, they went on a weekend trip to Napa Valley. When I asked Vanessa about the money, she looked hurt. "Oh, Faith," she sighed, as if I were being petty. "We spent so much on food for the house this month. Besides, you live here. You use the dishwasher too. Let us just call it even for the groceries." The groceries I rarely ate because I was always at work. It escalated. It wasn't just appliances. It was the unexpected fees for Mason's basketball camp. It was the vet bill for the dog that Mason insisted on getting but never walked. It was the time Richard's card got declined at a restaurant because of a banking error, and I had to slide my debit card across the table to save face in front of their friends. "Good girl," Richard said, patting my hand. "I will Venmo you." He never Venmo'd me. I became the backup generator for their financial mismanagement. They lived right at the edge of their means, leveraging every dollar to maintain the image of the wealthy suburbanites, and whenever they slipped, I was there to catch them. One rainy Tuesday, I sat down at my desk at Northbridge Metrics after everyone else had gone home. The office was quiet, lit only by the blue glow of my monitors. I opened a spreadsheet, but this time, I wasn't analyzing client churn rates. I was analyzing myself. I pulled up my bank statements from the last 5 years. I pulled up my credit card history. I created a ledger. On the left side, I listed every dollar I had cost them since I turned 18. The food I ate, the electricity I used. I was generous with the estimates. On the right side, I listed every dollar I had given them, the rent, the loans that became gifts, the groceries I bought, the repairs I covered, the time I paid for Mason's prom tuxedo because Vanessa forgot her wallet. I stared at the final sum. The cursor blinked at me. A silent heartbeat. I had paid them nearly $40,000 over 3 years. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't a dependent. I was a profit center. I was a tenant who paid above market rates and provided free emergency insurance. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I felt sick. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. For years, they had told me I should be grateful. "You live in our house. You eat our food. You should know your place." But the math said otherwise. The math said that without me, their house of cards would be shaking. I went home that night and found Mason in the kitchen. He was 19 then. He was eating a steak that Vanessa had cooked for him. He looked up as I walked in, his mouth full. "Hey," he grunted. "Mom said you need to pick up my dry cleaning tomorrow. I need my suit for the fraternity rush event." I looked at him. I looked at the 19-year-old boy who had never worked a day in his life, who drove a truck that cost more than my annual salary, and who spoke to me like I was a service app on his phone. "I have work tomorrow, Mason," I said, my voice flat. "So?" He shrugged. "Just do it on your lunch break. God, don't be so lazy. You know I have practice." Vanessa walked in then, wiping her hands on a towel. "Faith, you are home. Good. Listen, the pool pump is making a funny noise. The repair guy wants $200 just to come look at it. Can you leave cash on the counter? I am out of cash." She didn't ask if I had it. She didn't ask how my day was. She just issued an invoice. I looked at them, really looked at them. I realized then that I wasn't a daughter to them. I wasn't even a person. I was infrastructure. I was like the Wi-Fi. I was like the electricity. I was like the running water. You do not thank the Wi-Fi for working. You do not hug the electricity. You do not cherish the water. You only notice these things when they stop working. You only talk about them when there is a problem. If I were to disappear tomorrow, would they miss me? Would they miss my jokes? Would they miss my perspective on the world? Would they miss the sound of my laugh? Or would they just miss the $500 on the first of the month? Would they just miss the safety net that caught them every time they fell? The answer was so obvious it burned. "I do not have cash." I lied. It was the first time I had lied about money. Vanessa's face tightened. The sweet mask slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing the annoyance underneath. "Well, go to the ATM in the morning. We cannot have a green pool. Faith, the neighbors will talk." The neighbors, always the neighbors. "Fine," I said. I walked up the stairs to my room. I closed the door. I locked it. I sat on my bed and looked at the practical luggage set Richard had given me years ago. It was gathering dust in the corner. "You are a wallet with legs," I told myself. "You are an ATM that cooks." The anger that had been simmering for a decade began to boil. It wasn't the hot, explosive anger of a tantrum. It was the cold, pressurized anger of a tectonic plate shifting deep underground. I thought about the trust fund. I knew it existed, but I didn't know the details yet. I just knew that Grandma had left something, and I knew, with sudden crystal clarity, that Richard and Vanessa were counting on that money. They weren't just using my current income, they were banking on my future assets to fund Mason's adulthood. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. I named it Exit Strategy. If they saw me as a business transaction, then I would start acting like a CEO. I would stop operating on emotion. I would stop operating on the desperate, pathetic need for their approval. You cannot get approval from a parasite. You can only get drained. I typed out a list of expenses I could cut. I looked at rental prices for studio apartments on the other side of the city. Downstairs, I could hear them laughing. Mason was recounting a story about his friends. Richard was roaring with laughter. Vanessa was chiming in, the sounds of a happy family. A happy family that was currently being subsidized by the daughter upstairs who was planning her resignation. I turned off the light and lay in the dark, listening to the hum of the house. Enjoy it while it lasts, I thought, staring at the ceiling fan, because the bank of faith is closing. I didn't know when, and I didn't know how, but I knew that I was done being the foundation they walked on. I was done being the silent partner in their fraudulent success. The next morning, I left the $200 on the counter for the pool guy. It was painful. It felt like paying a ransom, but I did it. I did it because I wasn't ready to blow up the bridge yet. I needed to reinforce my own side of the river first. But as I drove to work in my rattling car, passing Mason's shiny truck in the driveway, I felt a shift in my chest. The guilt was gone. The obligation was gone. All that was left was a cold, calculating determination. They thought I was weak because I was compliant. They were about to learn that compliance is not the same thing as loyalty, and they were about to learn that even infrastructure has a breaking point. Analyze the request. Task: Write part 4 of the story based on the provided outline. Role: American writer. 100 years XP. Realistic, modern, emotional, legal thriller style. First person: Faith Schaffer. Language: English. Length: 1,400–1,800 words. Content: Rainy afternoon. Legal envelope arrives at Northbridge Metrics. Addressed to Faith Schaffer, not the Lane family. Faith opens it in the break room. Grandmother left a significant trust fund. Condition: sole discretion of Faith. Handwritten note: You are the only one I trust. Build your life, not anyone else's. Emotions: gratitude plus fear. Vanessa Richard will see it as family resource. Discovery: lawyer calls the house phone. Mistake? Vanessa answers. Her face changes to radiant. Family meeting. Richard's arrogant tone. It's family money. Grandma wanted us to use it for the whole house. The demand. Mason needs a BMW for college/image recruiters. Vanessa's justification. Image is everything for a boy. A girl's place is to support. Faith's pushback. What about my grad school? My apartment? Richard's dismissal. You always figure it out. Don't be selfish. Investing in Mason is investing in the bloodline. Realization. The trust fund is already mentally spent on a BMW. If she stays silent, her future is gone. Formatting rules. Numbers as words. No ellipses. No canvas. Tone. Slow tension. Legal thriller vibes. Gratitude mixed with dread. Deconstruct the narrative arc for part 4. The arrival. The envelope. The sensory details of the rain in the office. The specific feeling of seeing her own name. The revelation. Reading the will trust documents. The amount needs to be significant but realistic. Enough for a BMW plus grad school apartment. Let's say $150,000 or maybe $200,000. The note. The emotional core. Grandmother saw the truth. Build your life. The secret. Trying to keep it quiet. The fear of the Lane absorption machine. The leak. The fatal error. The lawyer calling the landline. Vanessa's reaction. The predator smelling blood. The confrontation. The dining table. The specific seating arrangement. Power dynamics. The proposal. Theft. The logic of family money. The BMW argument. It's absurd but presented as logical by them. The rejection of Faith's needs. You're a survivor. You don't need help. Weaponized competence. The stakes. Faith realizes this is the turning point. Drafting. Section by section. Mental outline and key phrases. Scene 1. The office. Rain against the glass. The receptionist handing the letter. Personal and confidential. Scene 2. The break room. Smells like burnt coffee. Opening the letter. The legal jargon. Trustee. Beneficiary. The handwritten note. Crying silently. Scene 3. The drive home. Paranoia. Hiding the papers. Scene 4. The phone call. A few days later. Kitchen scene. Vanessa answering. Oh? A trust? For Faith? The smile. Predatory. Scene 5. The meeting. Dinner. Richard pours wine, usually a bad sign or a manipulation sign. Scene 6. The pitch. Richard speaking. Grandma loved us all. Twisting the grandmother's intent. Scene 7. The BMW. Mason needs the car. It's about status. Recruiters look at the car. Bullshit. But they believe it. Scene 8. Faith's defense. I need to move out. Scene 9. The shutdown. You're selfish. Scene 10. Internal monologue. The money isn't money. It's freedom. They want to burn my freedom to buy a toy. Writing. Focusing on tone. Legal thriller. Use words like fiduciary. Stipulation. Sole discretion. Emotional. The connection to the grandmother. The feeling of being seen. Constraint check. Numbers as words. 18 years old. 18 years old. BMW 5 Series. BMW 5 Series. Drafting the content. Iterative refinement. The note. My dearest Faith. Needs to sound like an old woman who knew the score. The lawyer call. Why call the house? Maybe they couldn't reach Faith at work. Or it was an old contact number on file. A believable slip-up. Richard's dialogue. Needs to be patronizing. The rising tide lifts all boats. Faith, but only Mason is the boat. Vanessa's dialogue. Needs to be about image. Appearance is currency. Refining and polishing. Self-correction during drafting. Check. Did I explain why the grandmother left it to Faith? Yes. The only one who won't waste it. Check. Is the BMW explicitly mentioned? Yes. Check. Is the girl's place sexism included? Yes. Check. No ellipses. Check. Word count. Need to expand on the internal reaction to the letter and the tension of the dinner table. Final Polish. Simulated. Text. It was a Tuesday in November when the letter arrived. Text. The envelope was thick, creamy paper, expensive. Text. Vanessa's face transformed. It wasn't happiness, it was calculation. Text. A BMW M3 or an X5. Let's make it a specific fancy model. Output generation. Self-correction during drafting. Make sure the grandmother's voice contrasts with the parents'. She represents truth. They represent the lie. The letter should be the talisman Faith holds on to. Let's write. Title, Part 4, Implicit. Text. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, carried in by the heavy Oregon rain that had been battering the windows of Northbridge Metrics all day. It was not a standard bill or a piece of junk mail. It was a thick, cream-colored packet with the return address of a law firm I did not recognize, stamped with red ink that read, Personal and confidential, to be opened only by addressee. The receptionist, a kind woman named Brenda, handed it to me with raised eyebrows. Look serious. Faith, you aren't being sued, are you? I hope not, I said, trying to keep my voice light, but my stomach gave a nervous lurch. In the Lane household, unexpected legal correspondence was usually a harbinger of debt collection or a dispute with a contractor. I took the envelope into the employee break room. It smelled of stale popcorn and burnt coffee. I sat at the wobbly laminate table, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I slid my finger under the flap and tore it open. Inside, there was a stack of documents clipped together, dense with legal jargon. Last will and testament, trust agreement, fiduciary duty. My eyes scanned the pages, catching phrases that made the room spin. Beneficiary, Faith Schaffer, assets, liquidity. And then, clipped to the front, a smaller envelope, a handwritten note. I recognized the script immediately. It was shaky, spiderweb thin, but unmistakably the handwriting of my grandmother, my mother's mother. She had passed away 6 months ago. I had not been allowed to go to the funeral because it was during finals week, and Richard had insisted that education comes first, though I suspected he just didn't want to pay for the plane ticket. I opened the note. My dearest Faith, if you are reading this, I am gone. I have watched you from afar. My sweet girl, I have watched you shrink yourself to fit into a house that does not have room for you. I know I cannot buy back your childhood, but I can buy your freedom. I have left everything to you, not to your father, not to that woman, to you. You are the only one I trust not to waste it on appearances. You are the only one who knows the value of $1 because you have never been given one freely. Use this money to build your life. Faith, not the life they want for you, your life. Do not let them take this. They will try. Love, Grandma. I pressed a hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and fast. It wasn't just the money, though the sum listed in the trust document was life-changing. It was enough for tuition, for an apartment, for a start. It was the fact that someone had seen me. For years, I had felt invisible, a piece of furniture in the Lane house. But Grandma had seen. She had noticed the shrinking. She had noticed the erasure. I folded the letter and the documents and shoved them deep into my bag, under my gym clothes. A cold spike of fear pierced through the gratitude. They will try. She was right. If Richard and Vanessa knew about this, they wouldn't see it as my inheritance. They would see it as a family windfall. They would see it as a solution to their credit card debt, their mortgage refinancing, their relentless need to upgrade their lifestyle. I decided then and there to say nothing. I would contact the lawyer quietly. I would set up a separate account. I would make my escape plan in silence. But the universe, or perhaps just the incompetence of a junior legal clerk, had other plans. 3 days later, I was in the kitchen, washing vegetables for dinner. The rain had stopped, leaving the world outside gray and dripping. The landline rang. We still had a landline because Richard believed it looked professional on his business cards. Vanessa picked it up. She was wiping the granite counter, looking bored. "Hello? Lane residence?" I watched her back as I scrubbed a potato. "Yes, this is Mrs. Lane. Who is calling?" There was a pause, a long pause. I saw Vanessa's posture change. Her spine straightened. The rag in her hand stopped moving. "A trust fund?" she repeated, her voice rising an octave. "For Faith?" My heart stopped. The potato slipped from my hand and clattered into the metal sink. Vanessa turned around slowly. Her eyes found mine. They were not angry. They were not confused. They were radiant. It was the look a shark gives when it smells blood in the water. It was a terrifying, predatory delight. "Oh, I see," she said into the phone, her eyes never leaving my face. "Yes, she is right here, but you can speak to her father and me. We handle the family finances. We are all one unit here." She listened for another moment, then laughed, a light tinkling sound that chilled my blood. "Of course, we will discuss it as a family tonight. Thank you so much for the good news." She hung up the phone. The silence in the kitchen was heavy, suffocating. "Well," Vanessa said, a slow smile spreading across her face, "it seems your grandmother finally made herself useful." That evening, Richard called a family meeting. We sat in the formal dining room, a room we only used for Thanksgiving or when Richard wanted to lecture us. The chandelier was dimmed. Richard sat at the head of the table. Vanessa sat to his right. Mason sat to his left, scrolling on his phone, looking bored. I sat at the far end, opposite Richard. The distance felt symbolic. I was the defendant. They were the tribunal. "Faith," Richard began, pouring himself a glass of red wine. He didn't offer me any. "We had an interesting conversation with a Mr. Henderson from the estate today. It seems your grandmother left a trust." "She left it to me," I said. My voice was quiet, but I forced it to be steady. "To me, Dad, specifically." Richard waved his hand dismissively, as if I had pointed out a spelling error on a menu. "Semantics, Faith. Your grandmother was a traditional woman. She understood that families survive by pooling resources. She might have put your name on the paper, but she undoubtedly intended for this money to benefit the Lane legacy." "She wrote me a letter," I said, my hands clenching in my lap. "She told me to use it for myself." Vanessa chuckled softly. "Oh, honey, old people get confused. She probably forgot that you're still living under our roof, eating our food. She wouldn't want you to be selfish." Mason looked up from his phone. "How much is it?" "Enough," Richard said, his eyes gleaming. "Enough to solve a very pressing problem we have been discussing." He leaned forward, placing his elbows on the table, the posture of a CEO closing a deal. "Mason is graduating in 3 months," Richard said. "He has been accepted to state, which is fantastic, but we need to think about his brand. He is going to be rushing the best fraternities. He is going to be trying out for the club basketball team. First impressions are everything." I felt a cold dread pooling in my stomach. I knew where this was going. "He needs a car," Richard said, "and not just any car, a vehicle that says he comes from success, a vehicle that commands respect." "A BMW," Vanessa interjected, her eyes shining. "The 5 Series, black, leather interior. It is elegant, powerful. It is exactly what a young man needs to launch his adult life. I stared at them. I blinked, trying to process the absurdity. You want to use my inheritance, I said slowly, to buy Mason a luxury car? We want to use the family's windfall to invest in the family's future, Richard corrected, his tone hardening. Mason is the son. He carries the name. His success reflects on all of us. If he shows up in a rusted sedan, he looks weak. If he shows up in a BMW, he looks like a leader. It opens doors, networking, faith. It is an investment. What about my investment? I asked. My voice was rising now, trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. Dad, I am driving a car that breaks down every time it rains. I am working a full-time job and paying you rent. I want to go to grad school. I want to move into my own apartment. That money is my chance to finally start my life. Richard laughed. It was a cold, short bark of a laugh. Oh, come on. Faith, he said, shaking his head. You are a survivor. You always figure it out. You are scrappy. You don't need a BMW to make friends. You are practical. Practical, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Besides, Vanessa added, taking a sip of her wine, a girl's place is to support her family, not to flash wealth. It would look tacky for you to be driving a luxury car while your brother takes the bus. Think about how that looks to the neighbors. It is unseemly. So my future is unseemly, but Mason's $60,000 toy is an investment? I asked. Mason slammed his phone down on the table. It's not a toy. Faith, it's branding. You don't get it because you're a loser who works in a cubicle. I have potential. I have places to go. Mason, Richard said, but there was no reprimand in his tone, only pride. Don't call your sister a loser. She is just confused. She doesn't see the big picture. Richard looked at me again. His face settled into a mask of paternal disappointment. Faith, listen to me. I am your father. I know what is best. You are not ready to handle that kind of money. You will waste it on rent, on silly art classes, on things that disappear. A car is an asset. It is a tangible representation of our family's success. When Mason drives that car, he carries all of us with him. And what happens to me? I whispered. You continue as you are, Richard said, shrugging. You are doing fine. You are strong. We are so proud of how strong you are. Why fix what isn't broken? I looked around the table. I saw the arrogance in Mason's jaw. I saw the greed in Vanessa's eyes. I saw the utter, chilling indifference in my father's face. They didn't see me as a person with dreams. They didn't see me as a daughter who deserved a safety net. To them, I was a resource to be mined. My grandmother's legacy was nothing more than a showroom sticker on a windshield for their golden prince. If I gave in, if I signed that money over, I would be signing away my existence. I would be funding the very dynamic that had suffocated me for 15 years. I won't do it, I said. The room went dead silent. Excuse me? Vanessa asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I said no, I said, pushing my chair back. My legs were shaking, but I stood up. The trust is in my name. The legal documents say sole discretion. Grandma left it to me, not to the Lane family, to Faith Schaffer. Richard stood up too. He was a tall man, and he used his height to intimidate. He leaned over the table, his face reddening. You are living in my house, he snarled. You are eating my food. Do not think for 1 second that you can hoard resources while your brother goes without. That is not how this family works. You are being selfish. Faith, incredibly, disgustingly selfish. Investing in Mason is investing in the bloodline, he continued, spitting the words out. You are a girl. You will marry someone and change your name. Mason is the Lane name. Do not forget that. The misogyny was so naked, so brutal, that it almost took my breath away. But strangely, it also clarified everything. There was no love here. There was only a hierarchy. And I was at the bottom, expected to feed the ones at the top. I am going to bed, I said, turning away before they could see the tears threatening to fall. We are not done discussing this, Vanessa shouted after me. I am, I said. I walked up the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. I heard them talking below, angry, hushed tones, plotting. I went into my room and wedged a chair under the doorknob. It was a childish defense, but it was all I had. I pulled the grandmother's letter out of my bag and read it again. Build your life. Faith, not the life they want for you. I looked at the BMW brochure that Mason had already left on the kitchen counter earlier that week. He had been planning this before the money even arrived. They had already spent my freedom. They had mentally cashed the check. I realized then that this wasn't just a disagreement about a car. This was a war for my soul. If I let them take this, I would never get out. I would be the convenient child until the day I died. I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, listening to the rain start up again outside. I was terrified. But for the first time in my life, I possessed something they wanted, and that gave me power. I just had to figure out how to hold on to it without being destroyed in the process. The rain in Oregon does not wash things clean. It just makes the grime stick harder. It was a Tuesday afternoon in November, the kind of day where the sky is a bruised purple by 4 p.m, when the receptionist at Northbridge Metrics dropped a thick cream-colored envelope onto my desk. This came by courier, she said, raising an eyebrow. Looks legal. You aren't in trouble, are you? I looked at the return address. It was a law firm in Seattle I did not recognize, but my name was typed clearly on the front. Ms. Faith Schaffer, personal and confidential. It was the first time in my life I had received something so official that did not also include the names Richard or Vanessa Lane. I took the envelope into the break room, my hands trembling slightly. The air smelled of burnt coffee and stale donuts. I sat at the wobbly laminate table and tore open the seal. Inside was a stack of documents on heavy bond paper. Last will and testament, trust agreement, and a smaller, lavender envelope with my name written in shaky, spiderweb script. I opened the lavender envelope first. It was from my grandmother, my mother's mother. She had passed away 6 months ago. I had not been allowed to attend the funeral because Richard claimed it was too disruptive to my work schedule, though I knew he just didn't want to pay for the gas to drive me up to Seattle. My dearest Faith. The note read, If you are reading this, I am gone. I have watched you from afar. My sweet girl, I have seen how you shrink yourself to fit into the corners of that house. I cannot give you back your mother, and I cannot give you back your childhood, but I can give you a door. I have left the bulk of my estate to you in a private trust. You are the only one I trust not to squander it on appearances. Use this money to build your life. Faith, not the life they want for you. Your life. Do not let them take this. They will try. Love, Grandma. I pressed a hand to my mouth to stifle the sob that tried to claw its way out of my throat. I felt a rush of heat behind my eyes. For 26 years, I had been told I was invisible, useful only for what I could provide. But she had seen me. She had really seen me. I turned to the legal documents. The numbers were spelled out in black and white. $250,000. It was not a fortune to a billionaire, but to me, it was everything. It was grad school tuition. It was a down payment on a small condo. It was the ability to walk into a grocery store and not calculate the tax on a loaf of bread before putting it in the basket. It was freedom. But then, the cold dread set in. They will try. I shoved the papers deep into my bag, under my gym clothes. I resolved right then to tell no one. I would contact the lawyer on my lunch break. I would transfer the funds to a secure account. I would disappear before they even knew I had a ticket. But secrets in the Lane house were like water in a cracked vase. They always leaked out. 3 days later, the landline rang while I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner. We still had a landline, because Vanessa liked the aesthetic of the vintage phone on the hallway table. Vanessa picked it up. Lane residence, she said, her voice practicing its usual charm. I watched her back as she listened. I saw her spine stiffen. I saw her hand tighten around the receiver. A trust? She repeated. Her voice wasn't angry. It was sharp, interested. For Faith? I see. Yes. We are her guardians. Well, her family. We handle all financial matters together. My stomach dropped to the floor. The lawyer. It had to be the lawyer. Probably calling to confirm receipt of the documents, unaware that dialing the home number listed in old records was equivalent to throwing raw meat into a shark tank. Vanessa turned around. Her face had transformed. The boredom was gone. In its place was a radiant, terrifying smile. "That was Mr. Henderson," she said, hanging up the phone slowly. "It seems your grandmother finally decided to contribute to the family." That night, the atmosphere in the dining room was electric. Richard opened a bottle of expensive Cabernet, a vintage he usually saved for his boss. He poured 4 glasses, even one for Mason, who was 18 years old and technically underage. But Richard winked and said, "Tonight is a celebration." I sat at the far end of the table, my hands clenched in my lap. I felt like a prisoner awaiting sentencing. "Faith," Richard began, swirling his wine, "we are so proud of you. It seems your grandmother left a significant legacy, $250,000. That is a life-changing amount for this family." "For me," I said quietly, "she left it to me. Dad, the letter said—" "Now, let's not get bogged down in technicalities," Richard interrupted, his voice smooth and paternal. "Grandma loved us all. She knew that by giving it to you, she was giving it to the household. She knew you would do the right thing." "The right thing?" I asked, my voice trembling. "We have been discussing it," Vanessa said, leaning forward. Her eyes were bright, predatory. "Mason is starting college in the fall. We want him to rush the best fraternities. We want him to make connections with the sons of senators and CEOs. Appearance is everything in that world. Faith, you know that." "He needs a car," Richard said flatly. "A real car." "I have a truck," Mason said, chewing on a piece of steak. "But Mom says it's too blue-collar for the frat row." "Exactly," Vanessa said. "He needs a BMW. The new 5 Series. Black, leather interior, sport package. It screams success. It tells the world that Mason Lane is a young man of substance. It will help him get recruited for the club team. It will help him find the right caliber of girlfriend. It is an investment in his future." I stared at them. I felt the room tilting. "You want to use my inheritance," I said, formulating the words slowly. "To buy Mason a $60,000 car?" $70,000, actually, with the upgrades," Mason corrected, not looking up from his plate. "It is family money." "Faith," Richard said, his tone hardening. "Don't be selfish. We have supported you for 26 years. We put a roof over your head. We fed you. Now, when the family finally gets a break, you want to hoard it? That is not how we raised you." "But what about me?" I asked. The question felt pathetic, but I had to ask it. "Dad, I drive a car that has 200,000 miles on it. I have to tape the window up when it rains. I want to go to graduate school. I want to move out. That money is my chance to stop living paycheck to paycheck." Richard sighed, setting his wine glass down with a sharp clink. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Faith, look at you," he said. "You are a survivor. You are scrappy. You always figure it out. You don't need a BMW to impress anyone. You are practical. You are the steady one. Mason needs the help. He is a boy entering a man's world. He needs the armor. You are fine in the background." "My place is in the background?" I whispered. "Your place is to support the family," Vanessa snapped, her mask slipping. "Stop making this about you. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to maintain this house? To maintain the lifestyle you enjoy? This money is a godsend. It will pay off the credit cards, fix the roof, and get Mason the car he deserves. It lifts us all up." "It lifts you up," I said. "It buries me." "Don't be dramatic," Richard said. "We will manage the fund for you. We will put it in a joint account. We will buy the car, pay off a few bills, and keep the rest for a rainy day. It is the only logical way to handle it. You are too young to manage that kind of capital. You would waste it on silly things. Rent, art supplies." He knew. He knew about the art. He used it as a weapon to prove my incompetence. I looked at Mason. He was grinning now, pulling up a picture of the car on his phone to show Vanessa. "Look, Mom, the M Sport package has the red calipers. That is sick." "Beautiful," Vanessa cooed. "You will look like a prince in that." I realized then that the money was already gone in their minds. They had already spent it. The trust fund was not my safety net. It was their lottery win. I looked at Richard. "The legal documents say I have sole discretion. I have to sign for the funds to be released." The room went quiet. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Richard looked at me. His eyes were cold, devoid of any warmth or fatherly affection. They were the eyes of a man looking at a malfunctioning appliance. "Faith," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "do not go down this road. You are part of this family. If you declare war on us over money, you will regret it. We are all you have. Who else is going to love you? Who else is going to put up with you?" "I am not signing," I said. My voice was barely a whisper, but it was there. "We will discuss this later," Vanessa said breezily, though her knuckles were white as she gripped her fork. "You are just tired. You are in shock. Once you calm down, you will see that we are right. Mason, show your sister the interior lighting options. Maybe she can help pick the color." She was trying to make me complicit. She was trying to force me into the role of the doting sister, helping pick out the toy that was being bought with her own stolen freedom. I stood up. "I am not hungry." "Sit down," Richard commanded. "No," I said. I walked out of the dining room. I felt their eyes boring into my back. I heard Mason mutter, "She's such a bitch." And I heard Richard say, "Let her go. I will handle her. She just needs to be reminded of her place." I went to my room and locked the door. I pulled the chair under the handle again. I took out my grandmother's letter and read the line again. "They will try." They weren't just trying. They were planning a heist. They felt entitled to my future because they had owned my past. I looked at the rain streaking against the window. I thought about Mason in a shiny black BMW, driving to a party, while I took the bus to work because my car finally died. No, something inside me, something that had been dormant for 26 years, finally snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet, metallic click of a lock sliding into place. I wasn't going to let them have it. Not 1 cent, not one single dime. But as I listened to the murmurs coming from the dining room, I knew that saying no was only the beginning. They wouldn't stop at asking. They would move to taking, and I had to be ready. Analyze the request. Task: write part 5 of the story based on the provided outline. Role: American writer, 100 years XP. Realistic, modern, thriller style. First person, Faith Schaffer. Language: English. Length: 1,400-1,800 words. Content: escalation of pressure. Conversations in the kitchen. Vanessa's tactics: guilt-tripping. Heart condition: if I die, it's your fault. Richard's tactics: rational control. You're too young. We'll manage it for you. Ask us when you need money. Mason's tactics: blatant entitlement. Buy me the car. I'll make you TikTok famous. The turning point: Faith says no. The room freezes. Vanessa's mask drops. Who will take in an ungrateful brat like you? Eavesdropping. Faith hears the real plan. Richard threatens to seize her salary card. Vanessa suggests psychological evaluation to declare Faith unstable and get conservatorship guardianship. Faith's realization: this is financial abuse/predatory legal maneuvering. Action plan: opening a secret account at a credit union. Siphoning salary. Documenting evidence, receipts, texts. Legal meeting. Faith meets the trust lawyer, learns about the anti-coercion clause protection mechanism. Conclusion: nighttime determination. Better to pay the price for freedom than for Mason's car. Formatting rules: numbers as words, no ellipses, no canvas. Tone: psychological thriller. Tense, paranoid, but calculated. Deconstruct the narrative arc for Part 5. The siege. The days following the dinner. The house becomes a prison. The attacks. Emotional. Vanessa's fake health crisis. Intellectual. Richard's gaslighting about financial competence. Social. Mason's trivialization. The stand. The first clear no, the resulting hostility. The conspiracy. The overheard conversation. This is the darkest part. The plot to declare her insane. The counter-move. Faith acting like a spy in her own life. The credit union. The documentation. The lawyer. The safety net revealed. The resolution. Steeling herself for the explosion. Drafting. Section by section. Mental outline and key phrases. Intro. The house felt different, like a cage. The kitchen talks. Vanessa's scene, hand on chest. My palpitations. You're killing me with stress. Richard's scene, the spreadsheet. We'll set up a joint account. You have to ask permission. Mason's scene, the phone in the face. TikTok trend, the absolute lack of respect. The no. Faith refuses to sign the transfer papers. Vanessa's explosion. You'll die alone. The eavesdropping. Late night, water, hearing voices. Conservatorship. Mental instability. The link to Britney Spears or similar cases. Implicitly, the coldness of it. The strategy. The gray rock method. Acting boring, compliant while plotting. Opening the account. Small transfers. The lawyer. Mr. Henderson again. The clause. Undue influence. Ending. Lying in bed. The choice is made. Writing. Focusing on tone. Constraint check. Numbers as words. 250,000. 250,000. 18. 18. Constraint check. No ellipses. Use dashes. Atmosphere. Claustrophobic. Every interaction is a trap. Drafting the content. Iterative refinement. Vanessa's manipulation. Needs to be sickly sweet, then vicious. Richard's logic. Needs to sound corporate but evil. Fiduciary responsibility used as a weapon. The overheard plot. This needs to be specific. Not just take the money, but how. The mental health angle is crucial because it raises the stakes from theft to loss of personhood. Refining and polishing. Self-correction during drafting. Check. Did I mention the credit union? Yes. Check. Did I mention the receipts texts? Yes. Check. Is the lawyer scene included? Yes. Check. No ellipses. Word count. Need to make the dialogue heavy and the internal monologue detailed to hit 1400 plus. Final Polish. Simulated. Text. The kitchen became an interrogation room. Text. If I have a stroke, Faith, put it on your conscience. Text. Just sign here, and we'll handle the burden. Text. I'm not signing. Text. She's unstable. We can get a doctor to say she's manic. The overheard part. Output generation. Self-correction during drafting. I need to make sure Faith doesn't look too passive before the no. She's scared, but she's smart. The eavesdropping scene should be the catalyst that turns fear into cold action. Let's write. Title, Part 5, Implicit. Text. The days following the revelation of the trust fund did not feel like life in a family home. They felt like a hostage negotiation. The kitchen, once the heart of the house where I had spent thousands of hours chopping vegetables and scrubbing pans, transformed into an interrogation room. The air was thick with unsaid threats and performative suffering. It started with Vanessa. She began staging her episodes in the mornings, right before I left for Northbridge Metrics. She would be sitting at the island, clutching her chest, a bottle of pills conspicuously placed next to her herbal tea. When I walked in, she would let out a ragged breath, pressing her hand over her heart as if keeping it beating by sheer force of will. "Faith," she would whisper, her voice trembling. "I barely slept last night. My heart, the palpitations are back. The doctor said I need to avoid stress. He said stress could kill me." She would look up at me, her eyes wet with tears that seemed to appear on command. "If I collapse, Faith, if I have a stroke because I am so worried about this family's future, about Mason's future, can you live with that? If something happens to me, it will be on your hands." It was a masterclass in emotional terrorism. She was weaponizing her own mortality to guilt me into signing a check. "You should drink your tea, Vanessa," I would say, keeping my face blank, grabbing my travel mug and heading for the door. "I have to get to work." "You are so cold," she would cry out after me. "How did you become so cold?" Then, in the evenings, it was Richard's turn. His tactic was different. He didn't use tears. He used logic, or rather, a twisted, predatory version of logic that sounded reasonable only if you didn't look too closely. He would corner me in the living room, spreading spreadsheets out on the coffee table. He had created a mock portfolio. "Faith, sit down," he would say, using his boardroom voice. "I have been running the numbers. You are 26. You have no experience with high-level asset management. If you put this money in a standard savings account, inflation will eat you alive. You are losing money by holding on to it." He would tap a pen against a document he had drafted. It was a transfer of authority form. "The smart play," he continued, "is to let me and Vanessa be the custodians. We will put the money into the family investment vehicle. We will buy the car for Mason, yes, because that is a capital expense for his brand. But the rest we will grow, and whenever you need something, books, clothes, a little cash for a movie, you just ask us. We will approve it. That way, you are protected from your own impulses." "Protected from my own impulses," I repeated, staring at him. "You mean I have to ask permission to spend my own money?" "It is for your own good," Richard said, smiling benevolently. "You have never handled more than a paycheck. You will spend it all on rent or some overpriced apartment. And then what? You will be broke again. Let us be your safety net." He was trying to turn me back into a child. He wanted to recreate the dynamic where I had to beg for allowance, only this time, the allowance would be coming from my own inheritance. And then there was Mason. Mason didn't have the subtlety of his parents. He cornered me in the hallway one Tuesday, shoving his phone in my face. On the screen was a video of a sleek black BMW 5 Series revving its engine. "Look at that, Faith," he said, grinning. 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. Listen, I have an idea. If you buy me this, I will make a TikTok about it. I will title it, Best Sister Ever Surprises Me with Dream Car. I promise I will tag you. You will get so many followers. It will be viral." He looked at me expecting gratitude. He actually thought that internet clout was a fair trade for $70,000 of my grandmother's legacy. "I don't want followers, Mason," I said, "and I am not buying you a car." "Come on," he sneered, blocking my path. "Don't be a bitch. You don't even like driving. You drive that piece of junk Toyota. Let someone who appreciates cars handle the money." "No," I said. It was a small word, but in that house, it was a grenade. I walked past him, my shoulder checking his, and went into the kitchen where Richard and Vanessa were waiting for their nightly negotiation session. "I am not signing," I announced before they could start. "I am not transferring the funds. I am not buying the BMW. The money stays with me." The room went silent. The air pressure seemed to drop. Vanessa stopped stirring her tea. Richard froze with his wine glass halfway to his mouth. Vanessa's face changed. The sickly, fragile invalid vanished. In her place was a woman with eyes like flint. "You think you can survive on your own?" she hissed. Her voice was low, venomous. "You think you are special? Without us? You are nothing. You are a socially awkward, ungrateful little brat. Who is going to take you in? Who is going to love you? Nobody." "I will take my chances," I said, my heart pounding so hard I thought they could hear it. "Go to your room," Richard barked. "Get out of my sight before I lose my temper." I went upstairs, but I didn't sleep. Later that night, around 2 a.m, I crept downstairs to get a glass of water. The house was dark, but I saw a sliver of light coming from the kitchen. They were still up. I stopped on the bottom step. I held my breath. She is clearly not in her right mind, Richard was saying. His voice was hushed, conspiratorial. Resisting the family like this? It is irrational behavior, paranoid. We could use that, Vanessa replied. I heard the clink of a bottle against a glass. If we can prove she is mentally unstable, if we can get a doctor to say she is having a breakdown, we could petition the court for emergency guardianship, a conservatorship. My blood ran cold. I stood frozen in the dark, my hand gripping the banister so hard my knuckles hurt. It is an option, Richard mused. We could say she is a danger to herself, reckless spending, delusions of grandeur. If we hold her salary card, just keep it safe for her. That adds pressure. She lives in our house. We control the environment. We need to act fast, Vanessa said. Before she moves the money, if we declare her incompetent, the trust reverts to the guardian's control. I will call Dr. Stevens tomorrow, Richard said. He owes me a favor. I backed away slowly, step by silent step, until I was back on the landing. Then I ran to my room, locked the door, and pushed the dresser against it. I sat on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was a conspiracy. They were planning to erase me. They were planning to strip me of my legal rights, label me insane, and lock me away just so they could buy a luxury car and pay off their debts. I had read stories about this. Financial abuse, conservatorship abuse. It happened to celebrities. But it also happened to normal people. It happened to inconvenient women who had something others wanted. I took a deep breath. The shaking stopped. A cold, hard clarity replaced the fear. They want a war? I thought, okay, I will give them a war. But I wouldn't fight it with screaming matches in the kitchen. I would fight it with paper. The next day, I called in sick to Northbridge Metrics. I drove 3 towns over, to a small credit union where nobody knew the name Lane. I opened a checking account and a savings account in my name only. I requested paperless statements. I set up a P.O. box in a strip mall 5 miles from our house. I went to HR the next day and changed my direct deposit. I didn't move the whole paycheck. That would raise alarms too quickly. I moved 70%. I left enough in the old account to cover the rent Richard demanded, so the auto draft wouldn't bounce and alert him immediately. Then I started documenting. I bought a small voice recorder and taped it under the kitchen table. I started screenshotting every text message Vanessa sent me. The guilt trips, the threats, the I'm dying monologues. I dug through the recycling bin and found Richard's credit card statements, photographing the debt he was hiding. I was building a dossier. 2 days later, I met with the lawyer, Mr. Henderson. I didn't go to his office. I met him at a coffee shop near my work, looking over my shoulder the whole time. Mr. Henderson was a stern man with kind eyes. He listened to my story without interrupting. When I told him about the overheard conversation regarding the conservatorship, his face darkened. That is a dangerous game they are playing, Ms. Schaffer, he said. But your grandmother was a wise woman. She anticipated this. He pulled out a copy of the trust agreement and pointed to a paragraph on page 12. The anti-coercion clause, he said. Your grandmother stipulated that if there is any evidence, any at all, that you are being pressured, threatened, or manipulated into dispersing funds to family members, the trustee, that's me, has the power to freeze all third-party requests and place the funds in a blind protection holding. It also gives us grounds to file for an immediate restraining order to protect the asset, which means protecting you. Can they declare me incompetent? I asked, my voice shaking. Not without a fight, Mr. Henderson said firmly, and certainly not if we file first. If we show the court that their motivation is financial predation, their credibility will crumble. But you need to be strong. Faith, you need to hold the line until we get the paperwork filed. I nodded. I will. I drove home that evening with the ghost of a smile on my face. They thought they were playing chess with a pawn. They didn't realize the pawn had just become a queen. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the dark ceiling. The dresser was still pushed against the door. I could hear Mason playing video games in the next room, screaming at his friends through a headset. I could hear the murmur of Richard and Vanessa's voices downstairs, probably plotting their next move with Dr. Stevens. If I don't stand up for myself, I whispered to the darkness, nobody else is coming to save me. I touched the spot on my chest where my heart was beating. Steady, strong, and undeniably sane. If I have to pay a price, I told myself, I would rather pay the price for my freedom than pay for Mason's car. I closed my eyes. I was terrified. But underneath the terror was something new. A thrill. The thrill of someone who is about to burn the bridge while she is still standing on it, knowing she can swim, and knowing they will drown. Analyze the request. Task. Write part 6 of the story based on the provided outline. Role. American writer. 100 years XP. Cinematic dramatic style. First person. Faith Schaffer. Language, English. Length, 1,400 to 1,800 words. Content. Mason's 18th birthday party. Lavish setup, fairy lights, DJ, food, VIP guests. Pre-party threat. Richard tells Faith to stick to the script. Hand over keys, speech, don't ruin it. The prop. A black BMW covered in a tarp in the garage. They bought it, leased it, expecting her money. Clarification from context. Usually, in these stories, the parents lease it or put a down payment expecting the trust to cover it, or they just set up the reveal expecting Faith to cave. The prompt says, Faith looks at the car covered in tarp, implying it's physically there. Faith's role, server maid. Guests praise Vanessa for raising a sacrificing daughter. The witness, Jordan Wells, Neighbors +1, domestic violence coordinator, notices Faith's emptiness fear. The climax. Richard makes the toast, claims Faith is using Grandma's money to gift the car. The pressure. Vanessa pushes Faith to the mic. Smile, don't embarrass me. The choice. Faith realizes silence equals trap forever. Truth equals freedom at chaos. The action. Faith takes the mic. There is no car. The fund is for my future. I'm keeping it. The reaction. Dead silence. Formatting rules. Numbers as words. No ellipses. No canvas. Tone. Cinematic. Building tension. Sensory details. The stage metaphor. Deconstruct the narrative arc for part 6. The setup. Description of the backyard transformation. The falseness of it all. The green room. Garage kitchen. The final instructions from Richard. The threat. The performance. Part 1. Faith serving drinks. The microaggressions from guests. Such a good sister. The observer. Introduce Jordan Wells. Her perspective. Seen through Faith noticing her noticing. The climax. The speech. The gathering. The spotlight. The twist. The announcement. The breaking point. The specific moment Faith decides to go off script. The explosion. The delivery of the truth. Drafting. Section by section. Mental outline and key phrases. Scene 1. The backyard. It looked like a Pinterest board. Fairy lights. Catering. Scene 2. The garage. The beast under the tarp. Richard grabbing my arm. Here are the keys. Prop keys? Stick to the script. Scene 3. The party. Serving hors d'oeuvres. The guests. You must be so proud to help Mason. The nausea. Scene 4. Jordan, a woman in a blazer. Sharp eyes, watching me flinch. Scene 5. The toast. Richard ting 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 on the glass. The speech. The lie. So smooth. Faith wants to honor her brother. Scene 6. The walk. Vanessa pinching my arm. The smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Don't ruin this. Scene 7. The mic. Holding it. Looking at Mason's smug face. Looking at the BMW. Scene 8. The truth. No. The sentence that changes everything. Writing. Focusing on tone. Cinematic. Use lighting descriptions. Golden hour. Fairy lights. Flash photography. Internal monologue, the conflict between conditioning, obey, and survival, rebel. Constraint check, numbers as words, 18, 18, BMW, BMW. Drafting the content, iterative refinement. The car. How did they get it? Probably a lease or a loan based on the expected trust transfer. It adds to the stakes. If she says no, they are financially screwed. Jordan Wells. Needs to feel distinct from the other guests. Not drinking? Observant. The speech. Richard's speech needs to be nauseatingly patriarchal. The no. Needs to be clear, not mumbled. Refining and polishing, self-correction during drafting. Check. Did I include the "don't embarrass me" whisper? Yes. Check. Did I mention the neighbors filming? Yes. Check. No ellipses. Word count. Expand on the sensory overload of the party to heighten the contrast with Faith's internal coldness. Final polish, simulated. Text. The backyard looked like a film set. Text. Richard handed me a heavy velvet box. Text. I saw a woman standing by the trellis. Jordan. Text. There is no car. Output generation. Self-correction during drafting. Make sure to emphasize that Mason expects the car. He's not surprised. He's waiting for his tribute. This makes his subsequent rage, in Part 7, justified by his entitlement. Let's write. Title, Part 6, implicit. Text. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the Oregon sky in bruised shades of violet and orange, but in the Lane family backyard, it was already high noon for the performance of a lifetime. Vanessa had outdone herself. The lawn, usually manicured to within an inch of its life, had been transformed into a festival grounds worthy of a magazine spread. Strings of Edison bulbs zigzagged overhead, casting a warm, flattering glow on the guests. White linen tablecloths fluttered in the gentle breeze. A DJ station was set up near the hydrangeas, playing a curated mix of upbeat, inoffensive pop music. It was Mason's 18th birthday party, but it looked more like a coronation. I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at the gathering crowd. The mayor of our small suburb was there, the president of the local Rotary Club, people with influence, people whose opinion Vanessa treated like currency. Behind me, the door to the garage opened. Richard walked in. He was wearing his best navy suit, a silk handkerchief tucked into the pocket. He smelled of expensive cologne and anxiety. "Faith," he said, his voice low. He didn't look at me. He looked at his watch. "It is almost time. Do you have the script?" He wasn't speaking metaphorically. He had literally typed out bullet points for me on an index card. Express gratitude to parents. Praise Mason's character. Announce the gift as a tribute to family unity. "I know what to say," I murmured, my stomach churning with acid. Richard stepped closer. He reached out and squeezed my shoulder. It looked like a fatherly gesture, but his fingers dug into the muscle with bruising force. "Remember the stakes," he whispered. "We have already put the down payment on the lease. The contract is signed pending the transfer. If you humiliate us tonight, if you make a scene, you are out. No home, no family, nothing. You stick to the script. You hand him the keys, and we all live happily ever after. Do not ruin your brother's day." He pressed a set of car keys into my hand. They were heavy. The BMW logo on the fob felt cold against my palm. "Go check the ice," he commanded, releasing me. "And smile. You look like a funeral mute." I walked out into the garage. There it was, the beast, a brand new black BMW 5 Series, crouching under a silver silk tarp. It was polished to a mirror shine. It smelled of new leather and arrogance. It was a $70,000 machine that they had bought with money I hadn't given them yet, banking on the fact that I was too weak to say no in public. They were betting my entire future on my cowardice. I walked out into the party. For the next hour, I was not a sister. I was a servant. I drifted through the crowd with a tray of champagne flutes, topping off glasses, collecting napkins, offering polite nods to people who had watched me grow up but knew absolutely nothing about me. "Faith, darling, Mrs. Gable chirped, grabbing my arm with a hand weighing down by diamond rings. Vanessa told us about the surprise. You are such a saint. Giving up your inheritance for Mason? That is just biblical. Most girls your age would be off buying handbags. It is what family does, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Vanessa truly raised you well, another neighbor chimed in. Knowing your place, supporting the men in the family, it is a lost art. I smiled. My face hurt from smiling. I felt like I was disassociating, floating somewhere above the fairy lights, watching this girl named Faith destroy her own life one polite nod at a time. But not everyone was buying the act. Near the beverage station, leaning against a trellis covered in jasmine, stood a woman I didn't recognize. She was dressed simply in a blazer and jeans, holding a glass of sparkling water. She wasn't mingling. She was watching. Her name, I would learn later, was Jordan Wells. She was the +1 of a neighbor's cousin, a last-minute addition to the guest list. She was also an intake coordinator at a domestic violence center in downtown Portland. When our eyes met, she didn't smile the vacuous, socialite smile of the others. She frowned slightly. Her gaze dropped to my hands, which were trembling as I held the tray, then back to my eyes. It was a look of recognition. She saw the terror behind the mask. I looked away quickly. I couldn't handle being seen. Not now. The music faded. The DJ tapped his microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced, his voice booming over the speakers. "If we could gather around the patio, Mr. Lane would like to say a few words." The crowd murmured and shuffled, forming a semicircle around the back porch. Mason stood in the center, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He looked bored, tapping his foot, but there was a glint of greedy anticipation in his eyes. He knew what was coming. He had picked out the leather stitching himself. Richard stepped up to the microphone. He beamed, the picture of the benevolent patriarch. "Thank you all for coming," Richard said, his voice rich and warm. 18 years ago, this young man came into our lives and completed our family. Mason, you are our pride. You are our future. The crowd applauded. Mason gave a lazy wave. "But tonight is not just about Mason," Richard continued, turning his gaze toward me. "It is about the bond between siblings. It is about legacy. My daughter, Faith, has something she wants to share, something that proves that the Lane family stands together, always." He beckoned me forward. "Come here, Faith." It was a command, not an invitation. I froze. My feet felt like they were encased in concrete. The keys in my pocket felt radioactive. Vanessa appeared at my elbow. She looped her arm through mine. To the crowd, it looked like a supportive stepmother guiding a shy daughter. In reality, her nails were digging into the tender flesh of my upper arm, sharp and painful. "Walk," she hissed through a frozen smile. Her teeth clenched. "Move your feet. Don't you dare embarrass me." She marched me up the steps to the patio. The lights were blinding. I looked out at the sea of faces. 50, maybe 60 people, neighbors, friends, strangers, all of them holding wine glasses, waiting for the heartwarming moment, waiting for the sacrifice. Richard handed me the microphone. He stood close, his body blocking my retreat. "Go ahead, honey," he said. I looked at Mason. He was smirking. He held out his hand, palm up, waiting for the keys. He didn't even look at me. He was looking past me, toward the garage where the car waited. I looked at the crowd. I saw Mrs. Gable dabbing her eyes. I saw the phones, dozens of them. People were recording. They wanted to capture the moment on Instagram. Look at this generous sister. Look at this perfect family. And then I saw Jordan Wells. She had moved closer. She wasn't recording. She was just watching me. Her body tense, as if she was ready to jump the railing. Her eyes were locked on mine, and they seemed to say, "You don't have to do this." Time slowed down. I realized with a terrifying clarity that this was it. This was the moment. If I handed Mason those keys, I was signing a contract. I was agreeing to be the servant forever. I was agreeing that my grandmother's love was less important than Mason's image. I was agreeing to disappear. I thought about the letter, build your life, Faith. I thought about the rent I paid. I thought about the loans they stole. I thought about the phrase infrastructure. I gripped the microphone. My hand was shaking so hard the metal rattled against my rings. I looked at Richard. He gave me a sharp nod. Do it. I looked at Vanessa. She widened her eyes. Smile. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of expensive charcoal and lies. My grandmother, I began, my voice cracking slightly. I cleared my throat. My grandmother left me a trust fund when she died. Richard nodded encouragingly. This was part of the script. Establish the source. She left it to me, I continued, my voice growing stronger. Because she wanted me to have a life. She wanted me to be safe. I saw Richard's smile falter. This was not the script. My father and stepmother, I said, looking directly into the camera of the person standing closest to the front, told me that I had to use that money to buy a BMW for Mason. They told me that if I didn't, I was ungrateful. They told me my future didn't matter because I'm just a girl, and Mason is the legacy. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. The clapping stopped. The smiles dropped. Faith, Richard hissed, reaching for the microphone. That is enough. She is nervous. Folks, I pulled the microphone away, stepping back. I am not nervous, I said, my voice ringing out clear and cold across the silent backyard. I am done. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the keys. Mason's eyes lit up for a second, thinking I was capitulating, thinking this was just a weird speech before the gift. I held the keys up. There is no car, I said. Not from me. I am not signing the papers. The trust fund is mine. It is for my education. It is for my home, and I am keeping it. I dropped the keys on the patio stones. They hit with a loud metallic clack that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. Happy birthday, Mason, I said. Buy your own car. For 3 seconds, there was absolute silence. No wind, no music, no breathing, just the sound of a perfect suburban illusion shattering into a million jagged pieces. Then, the chaos began. The keys hit the patio stones with a sound that was far too small for the catastrophe it unleashed. Clack, that was it. That was the sound of my life breaking into 2 distinct halves, the before and the after. For a heartbeat, the silence held. The guests stood frozen. Wine glasses halted halfway to their mouths. Smiles stuck in rictus grins of confusion. They were waiting for the punchline. They were waiting for Richard to laugh, for me to pick up the keys, for the script to resume. Then Mason moved. The smugness on his face fractured, replaced instantly by the red-hot, petulant rage of a toddler who has been denied a toy, magnified by the testosterone of an 18-year-old man. Are you kidding me? Mason roared. His voice cracked, screeching into the microphone range even though he wasn't holding one. Is this a joke? Faith, stop being a freak. Don't you dare ruin my day. He lunged forward as if to grab the keys, but he stopped short, looking at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. Pick them up, he spat. Pick them up right now and do the speech. A few guests let out nervous titters, half laughs that died in their throats. They looked at each other, murmuring, Is this part of the show? Is this a roast? Richard stepped into my personal space. The benevolent patriarch mask was slipping, revealing the iron jaw underneath. He grabbed my upper arm, his fingers digging into the soft flesh so hard I knew there would be bruises in the morning. He leaned in, his face inches from mine, smelling of wine and fury. You are humiliating me, he growled, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that only I and the neighbor standing 3 feet away with his phone raised could hear. Fix this. Now, pick up the keys, look at the camera, and tell everyone it was just a bad joke. Do it, or you are dead to this family. The old faith would have crumpled. The old faith would have terrified of the volume, of the threat, of the sheer weight of his disappointment. But the old faith had died the moment I read my grandmother's letter. I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had charged me rent to live in my childhood bedroom while buying his son a luxury vehicle. I shook my head. I am not joking, Dad, I said, my voice steady, though my knees were trembling. This is not your money. It is Grandma's money. It is for me. I am not signing anything to turn my inheritance into a toy for Mason. It is not a toy, Mason screamed, his face turning purple. It is my image. You are stealing my future. Enough! The shriek came from Vanessa. It was a sound I had never heard her make, a raw, guttural tear in the atmosphere. Vanessa Lane, the queen of the Homeowners Association, the woman who never had a hair out of place, the woman who prided herself on her icy composure, finally snapped. The pressure of the perfect party, the perfect sun, and the perfect lie had built up behind her eyes, and my refusal was the pin that burst the balloon. She snatched the microphone from the stand and threw it onto the grass with a screech of feedback that made everyone wince. She spun toward me, her eyes wide and manic, the whites showing all around the irises. You ungrateful little wretch, she seethed, stepping into the circle of light, closing the distance between us. You are embarrassing me? You are embarrassing me in front of the whole neighborhood? Vanessa, wait, Richard started, trying to salvage the scene, but it was too late. Vanessa didn't wait. She didn't think. She swung. Her hand connected with my face with a sickening, wet crack that echoed off the siding of the house. It wasn't a movie slap. It was violent. It was heavy. Her palm struck my cheekbone with the full force of her body weight, and her rings raked across my skin. The sound was absolute. The DJ killed the music instantly. A woman in the front row dropped her champagne flute, the glass shattering on the pavers, but nobody looked down. My head snapped to the side. A white-hot explosion of pain blinded me for a second. I tasted copper, blood from where my tooth had cut into my inner cheek. My ear started ringing, a high-pitched whine that drowned out the gasp of the crowd. I stumbled back, clutching my face, my brain trying to process the impossibility of the moment. Vanessa had hit me. She had hit me in front of 60 people. She had hit me in the middle of her perfect garden party. You think you are someone? Vanessa screamed, advancing on me. She wasn't done. The violence had opened a door inside her, and she couldn't close it. She reached out and grabbed a handful of my hair. The hair she had always criticized as being too messy, too plain. She twisted her fingers into the roots and yanked my head back. Ah, I cried out, the pain searing through my scalp. Look at me, she shrieked, shaking my head like a rag doll. You owe this family everything. You owe us for the food in your belly. You owe us for the roof over your head. Without me and your father, what are you? You are nothing. You are a leech. I was 26 years old. I was a college graduate. I was an employee of a tech firm, and I was being manhandled by my stepmother in a backyard while my neighbors watched. Vanessa, stop. Oh my God. Somebody do something. The voices from the crowd were rising now, panic setting in. A couple of men stepped forward, instinctively reaching out, but they hesitated, unsure if they were allowed to intervene in a domestic dispute. Richard didn't step in to help me. He stepped in to block the view. He turned toward the guests, raising his hands in a placating gesture, sweating profusely. It is okay. Everyone, please, Richard shouted over Vanessa's screaming. It is just a family matter. Emotions are high. We are just disciplining. It is a misunderstanding. Please, enjoy the food. Disciplining. He called the assault of a grown woman discipline. Vanessa didn't hear him. She was lost in the red fog. She yanked my hair harder, pulling me off balance. Say you are sorry, she spat, her face inches from mine, her spittle hitting my cheek. Say you will sign the papers. Say it. I looked past her shoulder. I saw Mason. He was standing 5 feet away. He wasn't horrified. He wasn't scared. He wasn't running to pull his mother off me. He was glaring at me. Just give me the car. Faith, Mason yelled, stamping his foot. God, why do you have to be so difficult? You are ruining everything. Just sign the paper and she will stop. It is my car. You should be proud you get to buy it for me. His voice carried clearly across the patio. It was the voice of a monster in the making. A boy who had been taught that his desires were more important than his sister's physical safety. And standing near the trellis, Jordan Wells held her phone steady. She wasn't trembling. She was recording every pixel of Mason's face as he demanded his tribute while his mother assaulted me. I said no, I gasped, tears finally spilling over, mixing with the blood on my lip. Vanessa roared in frustration. She shoved me. It was a hard, two-handed shove against my chest. My heels caught on the uneven brick of the patio edge. I flailed, reaching for something to grab, but there was only air. I fell backward. Time seemed to suspend as I went down. I saw the fairy lights spinning above me, blurring into streaks of gold. I saw the horror on Mrs. Gable's face. I saw the dark night sky. I hit the ground hard. My right shoulder took the brunt of the impact against the concrete pavers. I felt a jarring crunch, followed by a wave of nausea that rolled through my stomach. My head bounced against the turf, snapping my neck back. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The wind had been knocked out of me. I lay there, staring up at the stars, gasping for air, clutching my shoulder which was throbbing with a sickening deep heat. Vanessa stood over me, her chest heaving, her hair wild. She looked like a stranger. The polished hostess was gone. In her place was a woman undone by greed and thwarted control. She raised her hand as if to strike me again while I was down. DONTYOUTOUCHER. The voice cut through the chaos like a whip. It wasn't Richard. It wasn't a neighbor. Jordan Wells leaped over the low hedge separating the garden from the patio. She moved with a speed and purpose that terrified everyone else into silence. She stood directly between me and Vanessa, holding her phone up like a shield, the red recording light blinking like a warning beacon. "Back away," Jordan commanded, her voice loud, trained, and authoritative. "Right now, I am recording this. I have already dialed 911. The police are on their way." Vanessa blinked, seeming to wake up from a trance. She looked at Jordan, then at the phone, then around at the silent, horrified crowd. "Who are you?" Vanessa stammered, smoothing her dress, her hands shaking. This is a private party. You are trespassing." "I am a witness," Jordan said, not lowering the phone. "And I just filmed you assaulting a woman, and I filmed him," she pointed the camera at Richard, "calling it discipline, and I filmed him," she pointed at Mason. "Cheering it on." Richard's face went gray. He looked at the neighbors. He looked at the phones that were now raised in almost every hand. He realized, in that split second, that the narrative he had controlled for 15 years, the narrative of the benevolent father and the perfect family, was dead. It hadn't just died. It had been murdered in front of an audience. "Now, look," Richard started, putting on his reasonable voice, stepping toward Jordan. "Let us not overreact. My wife is she is under a lot of stress. Faith tripped. You saw that. She tripped." "She didn't trip." "Richard!" Mrs. Gable shouted from the back, her voice shaking with indignation. "Vanessa shoved her. We all saw it." "Yeah, that was messed up, man," another neighbor muttered. The wall of silence had broken. The spell was gone. I tried to sit up, but a sharp cry escaped my lips as my shoulder protested. "Don't move," Jordan said, glancing down at me, her eyes softening instantly. "Stay down. Faith, the ambulance is coming too. You might have a concussion." "I am okay," I whispered, though I wasn't. The world was spinning. "You are not okay," Jordan said firmly, "but you are safe now." Mason walked over, looking at me on the ground with disgust. "Great. Now the cops are coming? Seriously? On my birthday? You are such a drama queen. Faith, you just had to make this about you." "Shut up." "Mason," a girl's voice rang out from the crowd. It was one of his classmates. She was looking at him like he was something she had stepped in. "Just shut up." Mason looked around, confused. He expected sympathy. He expected everyone to rally around the prince. Instead, He saw disgust. I lay on the cold ground, the dampness of the grass seeping into my dress. My cheek burned with a fire that wouldn't go out. My shoulder throbbed. My dignity lay somewhere near the dropped keys. But as I looked up at the sky, past Vanessa's pale, terrified face, past Richard's crumbling facade, I realized something. The BMW was still under the tarp. The papers were unsigned. And the silence that hung over the backyard wasn't the silence of submission anymore. It was the silence of truth. The Lane family was over. The perfect picture frame had been smashed against the floor, and no amount of glue or gaslighting would ever put it back together. I closed my eyes and listened for the sirens. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what would happen when the neighbors found out. I wanted them to know. I wanted everyone to know. I was hurt. I was bleeding, but I was free. The arrival of the police was a blur of sensory overload. One moment, I was lying on the cold pavers, staring up at the fairy lights that now seemed like mocking eyes. The next, the backyard was flooded with the harsh, strobing glare of red and blue emergency beacons. The sound of sirens cut through the suburban quiet, shattering the last remnants of the Lane family's carefully curated dignity. I was lifted onto a gurney. The movement sent a fresh spike of fire down my arm, making me gasp. Through the haze of pain, I could hear voices. They were sharp, authoritative, and blessedly disconnected from the toxic dynamic I had lived in for 15 years. "Step back, sir." I said, "Step back." That was a police officer, likely talking to Richard. "But this is my house." Richard's voice was rising, cracking with the indignation of a man losing control for the first time. "It is just a family dispute. My daughter is emotional. She tripped. It was an accident. I have video evidence that says otherwise." The voice was Jordan Wells. She sounded calm, cutting through Richard's bluster like a scalpel. I craned my neck slightly, wincing, and saw her standing near the patio gate. She was showing her phone to a uniformed officer. The officer watched the screen, his face grim, then looked up at Richard, then over at Vanessa, who was being detained by another officer near the hydrangeas. "She did not touch them," Jordan was saying, her voice clear enough for me to hear over the radio chatter. "The victim was retreating. The older woman initiated physical contact. The man attempted to intimidate her into silence. The video shows the shove clearly. This was unprovoked aggression against a non-combatant." Non-combatant. The military terminology felt strange, yet perfectly accurate. This had been a war, and I had been the only one unarmed. The paramedic, a man with kind eyes and efficient hands, clicked the straps across my chest. "We are moving out," he announced. As they wheeled me toward the ambulance parked in the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Mason. He was sitting on the bumper of his truck, the old one, not the BMW, looking at his phone. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at his mother, who was now crying hysterically and claiming she felt faint. He was scrolling, even in the wreckage of his family. He was bored. The doors of the ambulance slammed shut, sealing out the noise of the neighbors and the humiliation of the scene. The silence inside was sudden and heavy. The paramedic began checking my vitals. He was methodical. Blood pressure cuff, pulse oximeter, pen light in the eyes. "Faith," he said, looking at his clipboard, "I need to ask you a standard question. We ask everyone in these situations." He paused, making sure I was looking at him. "Do you feel safe returning to that home tonight? Do you feel safe with those people?" The old instinct, the one bred into me over 15 years of gaslighting, tried to rise up. Say yes, say it was an accident, say you provoked her, don't make a fuss. But then I remembered the taste of blood in my mouth. I remembered the sound of the keys hitting the pavement. I remembered Vanessa's face, twisted with a hatred so pure it looked demonic. I looked at the white metal ceiling of the ambulance. "No," I whispered. My voice was raspy. The paramedic stopped writing. "No?" "No," I said, louder this time. "They will not stop. If I go back there, they will punish me. They will hurt me again." He nodded, marking something on his chart with a heavy, decisive stroke. "Understood. We are taking you to St. Jude's. We will flag this as a domestic safety risk. Social services will meet us there. At the hospital, the emergency room was a different kind of chaos. Organized and antiseptic, I was wheeled into a curtained bay. A doctor, a young woman who looked exhausted but focused, examined me. "You have significant bruising on the left zygomatic arch. That is your cheekbone," she narrated as she typed into a computer terminal. "Laceration on the inner buccal mucosa. Contusion on the right shoulder. Cervical strain consistent with whiplash." She turned to me. "Did you lose consciousness?" "I don't think so," I said. "I just saw stars. I couldn't breathe." "Okay," she said. "We will do a scan to rule out a bleed, but it looks like soft tissue damage. Painful, but you are lucky. It could have been much worse if you had hit your head on the brick edge." She looked at me, her typing pausing for a second. "I am putting this in your file as injuries consistent with assault. Not an accident, not a fall, assault. Is that correct?" It felt like a final exam question. "Is that correct?" "Yes," I said. "My stepmother hit me, and then she shoved me." "Okay," the doctor said softly. "It is on the record now." Half an hour later, a woman in a cardigan walked in. She introduced herself as Elena, a hospital social worker. She pulled up a stool next to my bed. "Faith, I have spoken to the police officer outside," Elena said, "and I have seen the preliminary report. You have rights here. You do not have to go home. We can help you file for an emergency protective order right now. It means they cannot come near you, call you, or contact you through third parties." "They will say I am lying," I said, my anxiety spiking. "They always say I am lying. They will say I am mentally unstable. My father, he threatened to get a doctor to declare me incompetent." Elena shook her head. "They can say whatever they want, but evidence is evidence, and in this case, you have a very credible witness." She gestured to the curtain. "There is a woman in the waiting room, Jordan Wells. She says she knows you. She says she has video. Do you want to see her?" "Yes," I said immediately. A minute later, Jordan walked in. She looked out of place in the sterile hospital room, bringing with her a sense of grounded reality. She didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me with respect. "Hey," she said, "how is the shoulder?" "It hurts," I admitted. "I bet." She stood at the foot of the bed. I wanted to introduce myself properly. I am a neighbor's guest, yes, but I'm also a coordinator at the Downtown Center for Domestic Violence Survivors. I deal with this every day. Faith. She held up her phone. "I sent the video to the police sergeant directly. I also backed it up to a cloud server that only I can access. I told the police that, so even if your father tries to intimidate me or threatens to sue, the video exists. It cannot be deleted. It cannot be spun." She looked me right in the eyes. "I watched the whole thing. I saw your body language before the speech. I saw the fear, and I saw them corner you. I told the police that you were under duress. You didn't attack anyone. You were trying to escape." Tears welled up in my eyes again, not from the pain in my shoulder, but from the overwhelming shock of being believed. "You believe me?" I choked out. "You don't think I am making it up for attention?" "I saw a woman get slapped across the face because she refused to be bullied," Jordan said fiercely. "That is not making it up. That is survival." I broke down then. I covered my face with my uninjured hand and sobbed. For 15 years, I had been screaming into a void, told that my reality was a hallucination. You are too sensitive. You are dramatic. You are imagining things. Now, a stranger had walked out of the dark and turned on the lights. After I calmed down, the police officer came in to take my official statement. He was respectful. He sat down and opened a notebook. "Tell me why this happened," he said. "What was the trigger?" I took a deep breath. "Money," I said. "My grandmother left me a trust fund, about $250,000. My father and stepmother wanted me to sign it over to buy a BMW for my brother. They told me if I didn't, I was ungrateful. They threatened to take my salary. They threatened to have me declared insane." The officer wrote, his pen scratching loudly in the quiet room. "And when you refused?" Vanessa hit me, I said. She said I was humiliating her. She grabbed my hair. She shoved me. Did Mason Lane participate? The officer asked. He yelled at me, I said, remembering his face. He told me to give him the car. He didn't touch me, but he cheered her on. Okay, the officer said. This matches the video evidence and the witness testimony. We are charging Vanessa Lane with assault causing bodily injury. We are also looking into your father's actions regarding the threats. When the officer left, Elena, the social worker, leaned in. Faith, listen to me closely, she said. With an emergency protective order, you do not need to go back to that house to get your things. You do not need to confront them. The police can arrange a civil standby later to retrieve your belongings. Or you can have a lawyer handle it. You are an adult. You are free to walk away right now. I don't have anywhere to go, I said, panic flaring again. My keys. I dropped them on the patio. We have a temporary shelter, Elena said. Or, if you have a friend. She can stay with me, Jordan said from the corner. I have a guest room. It has a lock. Nobody knows where I live. I looked at Jordan. I barely knew her. But I trusted her more than I trusted the people who had raised me. Okay, I said. Before I left the hospital, I made one phone call. I called Mr. Henderson, the lawyer for the trust fund. It was late, but he picked up on the second ring. Faith? He asked, sounding worried. I saw the news on social media. Someone posted a video. Are you safe? I am at the hospital, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Vanessa hit me. The police are charging her. My God, Mr. Henderson breathed. I am so sorry. Faith. Mr. Henderson, I said. The clause, the protection clause in the trust, is it active? Absolutely, he said, his lawyer voice clicking into place. With a police report and a witness statement, it is ironclad. I am filing an emergency motion in the morning to permanently bar Richard and Vanessa from accessing the trust. I am also filing to remove them as potential medical proxies. They will have zero legal standing in your life. Good, I said. Lock it down. Make sure they cannot touch a penny. Not for Mason's car, not for their legal fees, nothing. It is done, he promised. I hung up the phone. I lay back against the pillow, staring at the sterile white tiles of the ceiling. The pain in my shoulder was a dull roar, but the silence in my head was beautiful. For my entire life, they had told me I was crazy. They had told me I was making it up. They had told me that their abuse was love and my resistance was betrayal. They said I was a liar. I touched the bandage on my cheek. Well, I thought, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. I guess I wasn't lying after all. If I had to be beaten in front of a crowd to be believed, then so be it. I had paid the price in blood and dignity, but I had bought something priceless in return. I had bought the truth. I am ready, I said to Jordan and Elena. I am never going back. The aftermath of the party was not silence. It was a digital roar that started as a whisper in the neighborhood group chat and quickly spiraled into a local scandal that the Lane family could not control. A video clip, shot by an anonymous guest, not Jordan, but someone standing near the back hedge, began circulating within 24 hours. It was edited to blur my face, protecting my identity, but there was no mistaking the shrill, terrifying screech of Vanessa Lane or the deep, booming command of Richard Lane. The audio was crisp. You owe this family everything. Without me and your father, what are you? Then came the sickening crack of the slap, followed by the image of a woman in a nice dress being shoved backward onto concrete. It was shared in the neighborhood watch group. It was shared in the PTA WhatsApp thread. And for the first time, the neighbors stopped nodding politely at Richard's carefully manicured lawn and started connecting the dots. Mrs. Gable, the woman who had once praised Vanessa for teaching me family values, reportedly told a friend at the grocery store that she suddenly remembered seeing me scrubbing the driveway at 11 at night on a school night. Another neighbor recalled hearing Richard screaming at me in the garage about wasting resources because I had left a light on. The facade of the perfect Lane family wasn't just cracking, it was shattering under the weight of visual evidence. While the suburbs burned with gossip, I was sitting on a bed in a Motel 6 off the interstate. It was a stark room. The carpet smelled of industrial cleaner and stale cigarettes. The sheets were scratchy, but to me, it was a palace. Jordan had offered her guest room, but I needed space. I needed to be somewhere where nobody knew me, where I didn't have to explain my bruises to a well-meaning host. The Center for Domestic Violence had helped me secure the room for 3 nights while they expedited the paperwork for a small studio apartment I had viewed online months ago, back when I was dreaming of escape but too afraid to make the jump. 2 days after the party, I moved into the apartment. It was a 3rd-floor walk-up with a view of a brick wall. It had a leaking faucet and a radiator that clanked. I walked inside, set down my single bag of clothes, items Jordan had retrieved for me with a police escort, and closed the door. I turned the deadbolt. Click. I stood there for 5 minutes, just staring at that silver lock. In the Lane house, locks were forbidden. "We have an open-door policy," Richard used to say, which really meant, "I need to be able to inspect your room at any moment to ensure you aren't hiding anything." Here, the lock was mine. Nobody had a key. Nobody could barge in to demand I make coffee or listen to a lecture about my selfishness. I slid down the door until I hit the floor, and I breathed. But the peace was short-lived. The war was moving from the physical to the legal. I met Mr. Henderson, the trust fund lawyer, at his office downtown. He had brought in a colleague, a criminal attorney named Ms. Vance, who was handling the assault charges and the protective order. "Faith," Mr. Henderson said, his face grave. "We have been doing some discovery. Since Richard Lane attempted to assert authority over the trust, we had grounds to request communications regarding his intent. And, well, you need to see this." He slid a stack of printed emails across the polished mahogany desk. They were from Richard's work email address, sent to a family law specialist 3 months ago, long before the birthday party. I picked up the top sheet. My hands shook slightly. Subject: Options for incapacitation of adult dependent. Body: My daughter is 26, but has a history of emotional instability. If she were to inherit a significant sum, we are concerned she would be a danger to herself. What is the threshold for establishing an involuntary conservatorship in Oregon? Can parents be appointed emergency guardians of the finances without a full trial? I felt the blood drain from my face. "He was planning it," I whispered. "He wasn't just reacting to the trust. He was researching how to lock me away before the money even arrived." "There is more," Mr. Henderson said gently. "Look at the 2nd page." It was an email from Vanessa to Richard. Body: Dr. Stephen says if we can document a manic episode, it helps the case. We need to push her. If she snaps, we record it. We need proof she can't handle reality. I felt sick. The constant criticism, the pressure, the sleep deprivation, the talks in the kitchen. It wasn't just cruelty, it was a campaign. They were trying to manufacture a breakdown. They were poking a caged animal, hoping it would bite so they could put it down and sell the cage. "This is evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud and abuse of process," Ms. Vance said, her pen tapping against her notepad. "This changes everything. Faith, this isn't just a dispute over a will. This is predatory." "I have something too," I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small digital recorder I had taped under the kitchen table during those last terrifying days. "I recorded them," I said, "before the party, when I started getting scared." I pressed play. The tinny sound of Richard's voice filled the high-end law office. "Keep her salary card. Tell her it is for safekeeping. If she fights back, we play the mental health card. Who is the judge going to believe? The successful businessman or the hysterical girl who works in a cubicle?" Then Vanessa's voice. "Just get her to sign. Scream at her if you have to. Break her down. Richard, we need that BMW for Mason's image. I don't care what it takes." Mr. Henderson sat back in his chair, a look of profound disgust on his face. "Well," he said, "that seals it." What does it mean? I asked. It means, Ms. Vance said, a sharp smile touching her lips, that not only are we going to secure your trust fund, but we are going to file a civil suit for emotional distress and attempted fraud. And Richard Lane is going to have a very hard time explaining to a jury why he was plotting to gaslight his daughter for a luxury car. Meanwhile, the court of public opinion was holding its own trial. An anonymous post appeared on a popular local community forum. It was titled, "Local Pillar of Community, Assaults Daughter, Over BMW Dispute." The post didn't name names, but it detailed the incident with uncanny accuracy. It mentioned the trust fund, the demand for the car, and the slap. The comment section was brutal. User 123. Is this the family with the perfect lawn on Elm Street? I always got weird vibes from them. PDX Mom. I was at a fundraiser with the stepmom. She talked about her stepdaughter like she was a servant. Now it makes sense. Car Guy 88. Imagine beating your kid because they won't buy you a 5 Series. The entitlement is off the charts. The Lane family brand was hemorrhaging credibility, and Richard Lane, a man who valued reputation above all else, reacted the only way he knew how. He attacked. He sent an email blast to the entire extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Dear family, you may hear some disturbing rumors. We ask for your prayers. Faith has suffered a severe mental break. She has fallen under the influence of a radical group who convinced her to attack her mother at Mason's birthday party. The video circulating is edited and taken out of context. We are trying to get her help, but she has run away. We fear she is a danger to herself. Please do not engage with her lies. He was still trying to run the crazy play. He was doubling down. But he miscalculated. 10 minutes after he sent that email, my phone pinged. It was a forwarded message from my Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister, whom Richard had slowly cut out of my life years ago. Faith, the message read, "Your father sent this. I don't believe a word of it. I saw the video online. That wasn't a mental break. That was self-defense. I am forwarding this email to you in case you need it for your lawyer. I am so sorry I didn't reach out sooner." I forwarded the email to Mr. Henderson immediately. Defamation. Mr. Henderson texted back 1 minute later. Add it to the pile. Vanessa, on the other hand, was not strategizing. She was spiraling. Since I had blocked their numbers, she started using burner phones and online messaging apps to bypass the blocks. The messages came in at all hours, a chaotic mix of fury and pathetic begging. Message from unknown number, 2:14 a.m. You are ruining Mason's life. The recruiter heard about the police report. He might pull the offer. Are you happy now? Message from unknown number, 2:20 a.m. Please, Faith, just drop the charges. We can work this out. We are family. Mom loves you. Message from unknown number, 3:05 a.m. You ungrateful bitch. I hope you die in the street. I didn't reply. I didn't engage. I screenshotted every single one, printed them out, and added them to the binder marked evidence. I was no longer the daughter. I was the witness. I was the prosecutor. A week later, the temporary protection order was granted. The judge had looked at the medical report, watched the video, and signed the paper without hesitation. Richard and Vanessa were legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me, my apartment, or my workplace. But the big battle was still coming. The hearing for the permanent distribution of the trust and the criminal assault case. Mr. Henderson called me into his office one last time before the preliminary hearing. Faith, he said, looking at me over his glasses, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. We have the evidence. We have the law on our side. We will win the money, and we will likely get a conviction on the assault. He paused. But when we walk into that courtroom, you are nuking the bridge. There is no going back. You will be publicly exposing your father as a predator and your stepmother as an abuser. They will lose their standing in the community. Mason might lose his college prospects. The extended family will be forced to choose sides. He leaned forward. This is the day you officially stop being the convenient child. You stop being the glue holding their image together. Are you ready for the silence that comes after that? Are you ready to be the villain in their story forever? I looked out the window at the rainy Portland skyline. I thought about the little girl who used to scrub the floor hoping for a smile. I thought about the teenager who wrote stories by flashlight. I thought about the woman who had been slapped in front of her neighbors because she refused to be an ATM. I thought about the piece of my leaky apartment and the lock that only I could open. I looked back at Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I have lived my entire life for them. I have set myself on fire to keep them warm for 26 years, and all it got me was a concussion and a demand for a car." I picked up the file containing the restraining order. "I am not afraid of being the villain in their story," I said, "because for the first time, I am the hero in mine. I am ready. Let us burn it down." Mr. Henderson smiled, a genuine, sharp smile. "Excellent. Then I will see you in court." I walked out of the office into the rain. It felt different now. It didn't feel like the gloom of Oregon. It felt like a baptism. I was washing off the Lane name, layer by layer, preparing to stand in the courtroom not as a victim, but as Faith Schaffer, and God help them when I took the stand. Analyze the request. Task, write Part 10, the finale of the story, based on the provided outline. Role, American writer, 100 years XP, courtroom drama style, emotional climax, first person, Faith Schaffer. Language, English, as requested in the prompt, Viet Tiep Phan Ten Kokochuan Bang Ting Ein. Length 1400-1800 words. Content. Courtroom setting. Faith versus Richard Vanessa Mason. Evidence. Video, slap, screaming, emails, conservatorship plot, recordings, play the mental health card. Witness. Jordan Wells, DV expert. Defense argument. Family discipline. Judge shuts it down. Twist. Grandmother's anti-coercion clause. Judge's question. Do you want them involved? Faith. No. Verdict. Restraining order. Full trust control to Faith. Criminal referral for Vanessa. Confrontation. Mason blames Faith. You destroyed everything. Faith's retort. I stopped setting myself on fire. Ending. Walking out into the cold air. Jordan's reassurance. Faith's internal closure. Outro. Specific CTA for Lila Revenge Stories. Subscribe, like, hype, comment location. Formatting rules. Numbers as words. No ellipses. No canvas. Tone, intense, vindicating, resolute. Deconstruct the narrative arc for Part 10. The atmosphere. The courtroom smell. The visual contrast between Faith, healed bruise, simple clothes, and the Lanes, polished. The video. Replaying the trauma as evidence. The silence in the room. The testimony. Jordan Wells. Validating the abuse. The defense flails. Discipline argument. Judge Harrison's rebuttal. The evidence dump. The emails and recordings. The conspiracy exposed. The legal twist. Mr. Henderson reveals the anti-coercion clause. The grandmother's foresight. The choice. The judge asks Faith. She chooses freedom. The verdict. The gavel drops. The aftermath. Mason's entitlement. Faith's final words to them. The exit. Freedom. The CTA. YouTube outro. Drafting. Section by section. Mental outline and key phrases. Intro. Courtroom 3B. The smell of old wood. My hands are shaking, but I'm steady. The video. Seeing myself fall. The sound of the slap. The gallery gasps. Jordan. It was assault. She is the rock. The judge. This is not discipline. The emails. Richard's face turning red. The conservatorship email. The trust. Mr. Henderson. Clause 14B. Grandma knew. The question. Ms. Schaffer, what do you want? I want them gone. The ruling. Restraining order granted. Trust fund locked. Criminal charges pending. The final words. Mason hissing, Faith delivering the fire line. The end. Cold air. Taking a breath. The future is mine. Writing. Focusing on tone. Constraint check. Numbers as words. 5 years. 5 years. Constraint check. No ellipses. Use dashes. Tone. Legal thriller. High stakes. Drafting the content. Iterative refinement. The judge. Needs to be authoritative. Justice personified. Richard's lawyer. Slimy. Trying to minimize. Faith's internal state. Not scared anymore. Just ready. Refining and polishing. Self-correction during drafting. Check. Did I include the specific line, "I just stopped setting myself on fire"? Yes. Check. Did I include the Mason interaction? Yes. Check. Is the outro correct? Lila Revenge Stories. Check. No ellipses. Word count. Ensure the courtroom drama is detailed enough to reach the length requirement. Focus on the reactions of the parents to the evidence. Final polish. Simulated. Text. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old judgments. Text. The video played. Text. Judge Harrison looked over his spectacles. Text. You ruined everything. No, I saved myself. Output generation. Self-correction during drafting. The prompt specifically asks for English text despite the Vietnamese instructions. I will write the story in English as requested. Let's write. Title, Part 10, Implicit. Text. The courtroom smelled of floor wax, old mahogany, and the sterile, terrifying scent of judgment. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded on the polished wood, focusing on the grain to keep my breathing steady. I wore a simple white button-down shirt and black slacks, clothes that I had bought with my own money from the credit union account. My hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, exposing the left side of my face where the bruise from Vanessa's ring was fading from an angry purple to a sickly yellow-green. It was a badge of survival now, not a mark of shame. Across the aisle, the Lane family looked like they were posing for a holiday card in a magazine. Richard was in his charcoal power suit, his jaw set in a line of righteous indignation, radiating the energy of a CEO who has been inconvenienced by a parking ticket. Vanessa wore a modest beige cardigan and a string of pearls, dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue every time the judge looked her way. Mason sat in the row behind them, slouched in his blazer, tapping his foot against the bench, his face twisted into a mask of sullen, explosive boredom. They looked perfect. They looked respectable. They looked like the victims. But then, the lights dimmed, and the large screen mounted on the courtroom wall flickered to life. "Your Honor," Ms. Vance said, her voice echoing in the silent room, "I would like to present Exhibit A, a video recording taken on the night of the incident." The video began. The audio was loud, too loud. Richard's voice boomed through the speakers, magnified and distorted, stripping away his polished accent to reveal the brute underneath. "We have already put the down payment on the lease. If you humiliate us, you are out. No home, no family." Then came the image of me, looking small and terrified, holding the keys like they were burning my skin. Then my voice, shaking but clear. "There is no car." The tension in the courtroom ratcheted up. I saw the judge, a gray-haired man named Judge Harrison, lean forward in his chair. Then came the explosion. Vanessa's screech tore through the air. "You ungrateful little wretch!" The slap sounded like a gunshot. Crack. Several people in the gallery gasped. On the screen, I stumbled back. Vanessa advanced, her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. She grabbed my hair. She shook me. "You owe this family everything. Without me and your father, what are you?" Then the shove, the fall, the sick thud of my body hitting the pavers. And finally, Richard's voice, trying to spin the narrative even as I lay groaning on the ground. "It is just a family matter. We are just disciplining." The video ended. The screen went black. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the silence of a truth so ugly that polite society didn't know how to digest it. Judge Harrison took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked at Richard. He looked at Vanessa. The respectable family facade had just been stripped away, revealing the rot underneath. "The prosecution calls Jordan Wells," Ms. Vance said. Jordan walked to the stand. She looked calm, professional, and entirely unintimidated by Richard's glare. She swore the oath and sat down. "Ms. Wells," Ms. Vance began, "can you state your occupation?" "I am an intake coordinator and crisis counselor at the Portland Center for Domestic Violence," Jordan said clearly. "And what did you see that night?" "I saw a pattern of coercive control culminating in physical assault," Jordan stated, her voice steady. "I observed Ms. Schaffer attempting to de-escalate the situation. She was retreating. She stated clearly that she did not want to sign the financial documents. The defendant, Vanessa Lane, responded with immediate physical violence. The father, Richard Lane, attempted to intimidate the victim and the witnesses to cover up the assault. Richard's lawyer, a slick man with an expensive tie who clearly thought this would be an easy case, stood up. "Objection. The witness is speculating on intent. This was a family argument that got out of hand. My clients were emotional. They were disappointed. This was a disciplinary moment, perhaps excessive, but certainly not criminal. We must consider the cultural context of parental authority." Judge Harrison looked at the defense lawyer with cold eyes. "Counselor," the judge said, his voice quiet but razor-sharp, "the victim is 26 years old. She is an adult woman. You do not discipline another adult with physical violence. That is not parenting. That is battery. Overruled." Richard flinched. It was the first time I had ever seen a man of authority speak to him with anything other than respect. "Ms. Vance then moved to the financial evidence. "Your Honor," she said, "the defense claims this was about a misunderstanding. We submit that this was a calculated attempt at financial abuse." She presented the emails, the ones Richard had sent to the lawyer inquiring about conservatorship, the text messages from Vanessa threatening to cut me off, the recording of Richard saying, "If she fights back, we play the mental health card." As the recording played, Richard's face turned a mottled red. He gripped the table, refusing to look at me. Vanessa stopped dabbing her eyes and stared at the table, her hands shredding the tissue into tiny white confetti. They were exposed. The conspiracy wasn't a theory anymore. It was a documented fact. Then, Mr. Henderson, the trust lawyer, stood up. "Your Honor," he addressed the court, "there is one final piece of evidence regarding the trust fund itself. The defense has argued that the grandmother intended for these funds to be used by the family." Mr. Henderson pulled out the original trust document. "The grandmother, Mrs. Evelyn Moore, anticipated exactly this scenario. Clause 14, Section B, titled, 'The Anti-Coercion Provision,' I quote, 'If at any time the beneficiary, Faith Schaffer, appears to be under duress, threat, or manipulation by her parents or any other party to disperse funds, the trustee is instructed to immediately freeze all third-party access and place the entirety of the principal into a blind protection trust, accessible only by Faith Schaffer, with zero oversight or input from Richard or Vanessa Lane." Mr. Henderson looked at the judge. "Mrs. Moore knew her daughter and son-in-law well. She specifically designed this trust to protect Faith from them. Any attempt by them to access these funds is legally defined by the document as a violation of the trust's terms." A murmur went through the courtroom. It was the final twist. My grandmother hadn't just left me money. She had left me a shield. She had reached out from the grave to slap Richard and Vanessa's hands away. Judge Harrison nodded slowly. He looked at me. For the first time, his expression softened. "Ms. Schaffer," he said, "please stand." I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I locked my knees. "You have heard the arguments," the judge said. "I have the authority to grant a permanent restraining order. I have the authority to rule on the custody of the trust. I need to know your position. Do you wish for your father or stepmother to have any role, advisory or otherwise, In your financial life or your personal life? I looked across the aisle. I looked at Richard, the man who had charged me rent to live in my childhood home while buying golf clubs. I looked at Vanessa, the woman who had slapped me for refusing to be robbed. I looked at Mason, who was glaring at me with the petulant rage of a boy who had lost his toy. "No, Your Honor," I said. My voice was clear. It didn't shake. "I want them to have no role. I want total control of the fund my grandmother left me. And I want a safe, permanent distance from them. I do not want them to know where I live. I do not want them to call me. I want to be free." Judge Harrison nodded. He banged his gavel. The sound was final. "So ordered," he declared. "I am granting a 5-year restraining order against Richard and Vanessa Lane. They are to have no contact with you. I am recognizing Ms. Schaffer as the sole beneficiary and controller of the Evelyn Moore Trust. Furthermore, given the video evidence, I am referring the assault case against Vanessa Lane to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution." Vanessa gasped. She grabbed Richard's arm, her face draining of all color. Criminal prosecution. That meant a record. That meant the socialite world she loved so much was over. Richard stood up, his face a mask of fury. But the bailiff stepped forward, hand on his belt, and Richard sat back down. The hearing was over. I gathered my papers. My hands were steady now. As I walked toward the exit, I had to pass their table. Vanessa was weeping openly now, terrified tears. Richard was staring at the wall. His jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek, but Mason stood up. He blocked my path for a second. His face was twisted with hate. "You destroyed everything," he hissed at me. "You ruined my birthday. You ruined Mom's life. You ruined the family. Are you happy?" I stopped. I looked at him. I looked at the 18-year-old boy who had never been told no in his entire life until I said it. "I didn't destroy anything, Mason," I said calmly. "I just stopped setting myself on fire to keep your perfect family warm." I walked past him without looking back. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the courthouse and stepped out onto the marble steps. The air outside was cold and crisp. It had rained earlier, and the pavement smelled of wet concrete and ozone. I took a deep breath. It was the first breath I had taken in 26 years that felt entirely my own. Jordan was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. She didn't say anything. She just nodded. "They will call you cruel," Jordan said quietly as we started walking toward her car. "They will tell everyone you abandoned them." "Let them," I said. "I have my own story to write now." I looked back at the courthouse one last time, then turned my face toward the city skyline. Somewhere out there was a small apartment with a lock that only I could open. Somewhere out there was a graduate school application waiting to be filled out. Somewhere out there was a life that belonged to Faith Schaffer. The ambulance ride was over. The party was over. The silence was over. I smiled, a small, private smile that didn't need anyone's approval. "Let's go," I said. And I walked forward, leaving the ghosts behind me. Thank you so much for listening to Faith's Journey to Freedom. Please comment down below where you are listening from. I'd love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on the story. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so more people can hear this story of resilience.